This happened when I was 18. I'm 22 now. I live in San Antonio, Texas. It was my senior year of high school, but this was when COVID just started blowing up, so everything began to shut down, including my school. Even though everyone was supposed to be staying home and being in quarantine, my friend group and I were going out more than ever. There wasn't much to do since all the non essential businesses were closed. But one thing about me, I love urban exploring, or exploring haunted places. To this day, I still do. I'm not one to scare easily. I've had a couple experiences with the homeless, cults, even had a gun pointed at me. But nothing compared to how odd and creepy this one instance I came across while exploring was. Moving forward, around this time, I started talking to a girl who I had a class with in high school. Her name was Clarissa. If it weren't for her matching my alibi of what happened this night, I'm sure none of my friends would have believed me. We were still kind of freshly dating, but I somehow convinced her to explore a wooded natural park at 3 a.m. here in San Antonio. The park is called OP Schnabel. It's relatively nice, safe, and very scenic during the day. But at night, it can be a dangerous place, and police usually roam the entrances to the area at night, keeping people away. In 2016, a 24-year-old woman named Lauren Bump was brutally murdered and stabbed over 20 times. And in 2021, a boy exploring the woods was shot. Clarissa and I get to the park around 3 a.m. It's super creepy and pitch black. The trees do a really good job at covering the moonlight. I don't like to have my flashlight on because then my eyes can't adjust to the darkness, and you can really only see what's lit up from the light. Plus, I wouldn't want someone to see my light from a far distance, so I like to keep them off while exploring. We were probably about 15 to 20 minutes in walking the main trail. I didn't plan to be in there for too long because it was kind of creepy and oddly quiet that night. I knew a trail that goes off the road that leads back to where my truck was parked. I told her we could take that trail, essentially making a full circle, instead of walking all the way back around. She agreed, and so we began walking through that off-road trail. We were probably only about 2 minutes into the off-road trail when suddenly, out of nowhere, a flute began playing. Clarissa and I stopped dead in our tracks and looked at each other, just listening. Whoever was playing it, it was super in cadence and sounded like it was playing some sort of piece of music. However, there was no time for me to process that it may have sounded good. It was creepy as fuck. As I said before, I don't scare easily, but 15 seconds into the flute solo, Clarissa began trembling in fear and on the brink of crying. I was kind of just listening, but when Clarissa started praying to God to save her and forgive her for her sins, that's when I realized the situation. To be clear, it was super hard to pinpoint where the sound of the flute was coming from. It sounded like it was coming from the direction of the previous main trail, which was parallel to where we were, with about maybe 30 to 50 yards of woods in between. But it was getting louder and closer, to the point where it sounded like the sound was
Ah,
right on
fuck.
top of us. Clarissa couldn't even focus because she was so scared, so I knew I had to man up and get us out of this situation. This is gonna sound corny, but I told her, "Don't worry, I'm not gonna let anything happen to you," and told her that we should run down the off-road trail to get away. So we did. We began to sprint. I believe the flute stopped playing, but it was hard to notice because I was more focused on getting the hell out of there. We only got about 30 feet when out of nowhere, we heard the rustling of bushes and the snapping of leaves and twigs before something big dashed across the trail right in front of us. Now, this could have very well been a deer or some sort of bigger wildlife, but it was so strange because I could almost feel the size of whatever was in front of us. I don't know if it was from the wind or what. The only thing is, I never saw a silhouette or a shape of anything in front of us. Another strange thing is, I didn't hear it coming and I didn't hear it run away. I only heard the dash right when it was right in front of us. As soon as we felt and heard whatever dashed across the trail right in front of us, we obviously turned back around and bolted in the other direction until we got back to the original point where we heard the flute. And then, as if whoever was playing it was waiting for us to return, the flute started to play again, loud and right on top of us. This time it was almost chiming. It sounded like it belonged to some sort of Irish jig song or something, but the chiming was still in cadence. However, it was still impossible to pinpoint where the sound was coming from. It was just surrounding us.
This is like, this is fucking me
This
right now.
started to panic because we were trapped. We had two options. go back into the off-road trail where we heard that terrifying dash right in front of us, or go back to the main trail where the flute and whatever psychopath was playing it was at. The off-road trail was definitely scarier because it was darker and surrounded by more dense forest, and at least the main trail was a cement path. Thus, I told Clarissa, who was still trembling in fear, let's start running down the main trail back to the truck. We ran back. Adrenaline was still pumping, so we cut the 20-minute walk into a 7 to 8 minute jog. And somewhere along the run, the flute noise must have stopped. Along the run back, there was a random porta potty, and I was scared to death because what if someone was on the other side or hiding inside of it, because it seemed to be somewhat parallel to where we were at earlier. Thankfully, I didn't see anyone or signs of anyone ever having been there. In fact, my truck was the only vehicle in the area near the main entrance to the woods. We made it to the truck, and I sped far away from there. The next day, I told all my friends about it, and I looked all over the internet to see if anyone's ever come across anything like this. People claim to run into ghosts, cults, animals making terrifying noises, but a soft and rhythmic flute solo, I couldn't find anything on that. Or maybe I just didn't look hard enough. I tried to figure out all the possibilities. There are some houses that eventually led into a neighborhood on the far edge of the woods, but those houses are at least a couple miles away, and we were fairly deep into the woods, so there's no way the sound could have traveled that far, because I'm telling you, the flute was clear as day, and it was 3 a.m. Obviously, I never found out who was playing that flute, or what dashed right in front of us. I actually kind of got chills writing the story. The more I think about it, it actually seems more paranormal, rather than something scary on a tangible level. I don't know if it was a person, ghost, cult, or what. I'm really hoping someone might have a rational explanation. Either way, I never really went back to those woods at night. I still explored plenty of creepy places, but never really came across anything like that ever again. I'm a 20-year-old guy. I work at a medium-sized hospital in northwest Alabama as a pharmacy technician. I work an early night shift, 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. I'm also in charge of stocking the surgery rooms. I work for 7 days in a row, and then I have 7 days off. Working the 7 sucks, but the 7 off feels amazing. I work Thursday through Wednesday, and on my 6th night working, a Tuesday, I left a little early to go stay with my wife at her aunt's house, about 30 minutes away from our house. She was babysitting her little cousins while her aunt and uncle were on a trip. The house didn't have any curtains, so she felt uneasy for the few nights she was there. I didn't go with her at first because it was during my work week, and she told me there was really no point if I was going to get there around 5 a.m. and then go to sleep once the sun started to rise. But on her last night babysitting, she felt extremely anxious, so I told her I was coming over. She is stubborn, but she thanked me and felt so much better once I arrived. Working the night shift for the last 2 years has really taken a toll on me mentally, and I think I've started to develop some slight insomnia. I literally could not go to sleep after getting to my wife's aunt's house. This isn't anything new, but I had never stayed up for more than about 28 hours before. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't sleep because we had a really big day ahead of us. We had to drop her little cousins off at school, our friend was having a gender reveal party, we had to go shopping because we had no groceries at home since she had been away for the last 3 days, and I had to be at work at 6 p.m. I ended up falling asleep in the car for a little less than 10 minutes. I was really feeling that wave of sleepiness come over me, but I ended up getting a huge Red Bull and another energy drink once I got to work. I had my wife drive me to work and pick me up since my brakes needed to be changed and I wasn't driving my car, and also because neither of us trusted myself to drive her car on over 24 hours of no sleep. It was Wednesday night now, and I had been awake since about 2 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon. My shift started out fine. If I could stay busy, that tired feeling wouldn't really get to me. I put in my earbuds and was listening to music as I was stocking the surgery rooms with their meds. It was a weeknight, so there were still some late surgeries finishing up, and housekeeping was cleaning up some operating rooms that had been used. It's not uncommon for surgery personnel to come into the room I was in and grab something that the room they were using may be out of, so I usually turn around and at least smile, and they smile back. I was in my own little world, stocking the Omnicell machine with meds and listening to music, when I heard the door behind me open. There was that distinct high-pitched squeal when a door needs its hinges to be oiled. made the loud crash that heavy wooden doors make when they shut, so I turned around to see who it was like always, except there was no one there. I didn't really get worried about it. Maybe they opened the door and saw I was in there and just decided to go to another room. So I continued on. As I pushed my cart to the next room, the light in this room was off. I opened the door, and I swear, I saw someone hunched over by the Omnicell machine, digging through the sharps bin. It's a bin where you dispose of needles and vials after use instead of just putting them in a normal garbage can. Someone had already been caught doing this before in search of morphine and consequently was fired. I turned on the light and was going to ask what they were doing, but when I turned the light on, there was no one there. Okay, now I was starting to get a little creeped out. I didn't know the time frame of when you could start hallucinating after not sleeping for over 24 hours, so I just told myself I was probably seeing things and needed to just calm down. I finished up stocking surgery with no other occurrences and headed back to the pharmacy. At 2 a.m. every night, we have to deliver patient-specific medications to the nurses' station. I'm going to use the 5th floor as an example of how the floors are laid out, but each floor number corresponds with which floor they were on. There are 3 elevators in the middle of the floor. If you go left when getting off the elevator, there's the 5100 and 5200 side, and if you go to the right, there's the 5400 to 5500 side. There are 2 wings on each side, so there are patient rooms numbered 5105 to 5115, and the other wing has rooms 5201 to 5215. Each floor is laid out the exact same way, so each wing has 15 rooms on each side. To shorten the floor names though, I'm going to refer to them as 51, 52, and 54, 55. Recently, the 5th floor, specifically the 54-55 side, had been undergoing some remodeling. So our overflow floor, the 3rd floor, was where they put the patients who were on the 54-55 side of the 5th floor while they remodeled. The 54-55 side was empty because there weren't that many people in the hospital that night. I made my way up the hospital, delivering meds to the nurses' station floor by floor, until I got to the 5th floor. I went to the 51-52 side, delivered the meds, and decided to go check out the progress of the 54-55 side. As I went over there, I just got creeped out. There were no nurses, no patients, just the long, empty hallways. The surgery rooms are already empty and desolate most nights, so I'm used to walking around down there no problem. But seeing empty patient rooms just creeped me out. I walked slowly down the 55 side. I heard a noise that sounded like one of the hospital beds rattling. As I passed 5512, I quickly found out what the noise was. As I looked into the rooms, I saw an old man violently shaking as if he was having a seizure. Blood was running down his eyes, nose, and out of his mouth. He was making this gargling, groaning sound, almost like the sounds the zombies in The Walking Dead make. A monitor was frantically beeping like it does when a patient is coding. My heart dropped when I saw this, and I took a quick step behind the door frame. I immediately stepped back into the room as I realized this man was in desperate need of medical attention. But when I looked back in there was no man. This bed was clean and made.
Where is this person who's playing that?
No signs that anyone had even been in that room for at least a whole day. I thought at that point I was for sure hallucinating. I quickly made my way back over to the elevators, and I made my way back down to the 1st floor where the pharmacy is. As the elevator doors opened, an old man in a security shirt and hospital badge got on the elevator. He patted my shoulder as he walked past me. It was that same man I had seen moments before, having a seizure and making those zombie-like noises. He smiled at me as the doors closed, and I watched the numbers on the elevator go all the way up to the 5th floor. I didn't push the button for the elevator to come back down, but the same elevator came back down to the 1st floor and opened. There was no one on the elevator. I ran back to the pharmacy and sat in a chair for the rest of my shift until my wife came and picked me up. As I was waiting, I googled when hallucinations start when you haven't slept. It said between 30 and 48 hours, and I was on hour 38 of no sleep, so it made sense. The pharmacy is located directly under the 54-55 side, so when I walk in, I can see the window at the end of the hospital wing on the 24, 34, 44, and 54 side. Sometimes as I wait on the elevator on that side to go back down to the pharmacy, I look out the window. As I was walking out to my wife's car, I looked back up at the 5th floor window and saw the same old man looking at me through the window. I got chills as I got into my wife's car. I didn't say anything about what I saw that night. I'm not sure why I would have hallucinated that specific man, as I've never seen him before, and even if I have, he has no significance in my life whatsoever. I'm still not sure, though, if that was even a hallucination, or if what I saw that night was real. It certainly felt real. I went to sleep immediately after getting home. I've not seen that man again, but this was just under 2 weeks ago. I live with my boyfriend in his house that he owns. It's a modest house in a good neighborhood. Violent crime here is typically low. I
I
say
wish you
modest
didn't walk
because
like you
compared
have
to most
shit in your
neighborhoods in
pants.
the neighborhood, it's on the smaller side. But having a smaller house in this neighborhood is still very desirable because it allows us to still live in a nice town without owning a multi-million-dollar home. It's a single floor, 3-bed and 2-bathroom house with a basement. We're on a very quiet block with a lot of privacy. The way the street curves provides this optimal privacy, as when we step outside of the house, there's not a single neighboring house directly facing us. There are 8 houses total on our block. Further down the block is a small wooded area. My boyfriend Mika was away one weekend in Vegas for a bachelor party last October. I was alone from Thursday to Monday. Friday after work, I had some of my girls over for a wine night. At some point while we were in the living room watching scary movies, the doorbell rang. We all went quiet and looked at one another with the same faces. The doorbell ringing late at night while
I
watching
was
TV.
holding it. What the fuck?
I went to go sneakily see if I could see who was outside on the porch, but I couldn't get a view from the window. There is a tiny glass panel at the top of the door, so I peeked through it. There were like 4 cars in the driveway. They had to know people were home, but I didn't see anyone on the porch. I went back to my friends, and while we all agreed that was weird, we accepted that it was just a very unfortunately timed ding-dong ditch. After everyone left, it was late enough for me to go to bed and fall asleep right away. But I was awoken that night, not even an hour later, to the doorbell ringing twice. I looked at my phone and it was like 1 a.m. No one belongs outside your door at this hour. I immediately called Mika, and he picked up sounding really drunk in a loud bar. He had to go to a bathroom to be able to hear me. Once he heard me, he told me to just stay in the bedroom and not open the door to anyone. He never once suggested calling the police, so I refrained from doing that for now. We ended our call, and I tried to just stay calm and go back to sleep. Just as my heart rate started to slow and I started to calm down, I heard something from outside. Some kind of clicking sounds until there was a knock at my window. And a male's voice said, "Hey, anyone home? I need some help out here." I thanked the Lord the blinds were closed. I couldn't see who was out there, and they couldn't see me. Instead of leaving, he knocked again on the window. He said, "I know you're home." This was what prompted me to call the police. I never heard the man outside walk away from the window. For all I knew, he was still standing outside of it. So I whispered the entire time while on the phone, reporting someone trying to break into my house. Call me dramatic or an embellisher, but I was scared and I wanted the police here ASAP. Within 5 to 10 minutes, the doorbell rang again, followed by loud knocks. I went out and approached the front door and asked who it is. A male's voice said, "It's the police." It was a different voice from the other guy. I looked through the glass and confirmed it was a couple police officers. I opened the door for them, and right off the bat, the taller officer in front walked right into my house without my even inviting him in. He said they were responding to my report of a disturbance, and I said there's a man lurking around the house ringing the bell and knocking on my window. I don't want to make a big part of my recounting this story about this particular police officer, but he was the rudest man I'd ever met. I felt like he was on a power trip. He was demeaning towards me, telling me to shush and talking over me while I was trying to explain. He also didn't seem to take my claims very seriously. His partner didn't say a word, he just stood in the back. The taller one asked me details that I'd already made clear I wouldn't have, such as what the man looked like, when I clearly stated that I hadn't seen him. And the officer actually said to me, "Well, you're the one who called us, ma'am. If you don't want our help, we can leave." I was taken aback completely. I'd never called the police before, and I never expected such a lack of professionalism. I apologized and said I'm just scared. It was around this time that the 2 officers walked around the house with their flashlights. They went full circle and then came back, but honestly, they didn't really check very thoroughly. I watched them through the windows. They came back to the door and told me there's nothing they can do if I don't have any cameras or proof of the man trying to commit any wrongdoing. The two cops then left. I didn't feel any better at all, besides the fact that maybe whoever that man was saw I called the police. I went back to bed, and thankfully, the next time I woke up was to sunlight creeping in through the closed blinds. It was around 10 a.m. It was Saturday, and that night my friend was having a Halloween party that I was going to help set up for. During the day, I did a little grocery shopping, and while I was at it, picked up some things for the party. My costume was Velma from Scooby-Doo, and my friend throwing the party was Daphne.
Basic.
I got to her house.
Basic.
The party started at 9, and it really picked up around 10:30. I was there pretty late, like I probably left her house a little after 1 a.m. I was good to drive, as I didn't really drink much besides a few beers. When I got home, I immediately noticed a cool draft in the house. After setting my things down on the dining room table, I noticed a window open. I went to shut it, trying to remember why I would have opened it. I went to brush my teeth, but then when I came out from the bathroom, I noticed the basement door was wide open. I froze. This was when I started hearing this faint but consistent clicking sound. As I got closer to the basement stairs, I realized it was coming from down there. And then I got to the top of the stairs, and I looked down to the pitch black basement, and the clicking suddenly stopped. A voice from below suddenly said, "You're finally home." With that, I slammed the basement door shut and took my phone with me outside. I banged on the neighbor's door until he answered, and I chose to call the police in the safety of my neighbor's house. It was unfortunately the same two officers who returned to my house. My neighbor accompanied me as I went to speak with them this time, and I think that may have had some kind of impact on that taller cop's attitude. He wasn't as rude this time. He and his partner checked the house while my neighbor and I stood in the living room. Eventually, after their initial search, I showed them some of the spots I'd imagined someone could be hiding. I basically tore the entire house upside down, while also on the phone with my drunk boyfriend. When I was sure that no one was here anymore, I packed a bag to go stay with my sister until Mika came back. This time I locked every window before leaving. The main takeaway lesson from my story is if you have windows that open wide enough for someone to crawl through, make sure they're always locked when they're closed. We still live in this house today, but for a few months, I refuse to be alone in the house for extended periods. I still have PTSD from this, and sometimes I have nightmares in which I think I'm hearing knocks at the window, and then I wake up. When I was 21 years old, I would be home alone at my parents' house a lot. We lived on a little pond which was directly in our backyard. On the other side of the pond was a little town park. Our neighbors were a bit spaced out. It was a pretty upscale, expensive block compared to the rest of the town, so the properties were big. I'm fully moved out now, but this was back when I was in college. My parents make a lot of money, and we have multiple homes, so often I was home alone. It was a random night in the summertime. I was off from school, so I can't remember if it was the weekend or a weekday, but odds are since I was home, it was a random weekday. I was in the back sunroom watching a show. That was my favorite room in the house in the summer
Mhm.
because it was the most cozy and had the best breeze with all the windows open. I was right on the corner of the couch closest to the corner window when I heard splashing from outside, like in the pond. It could have been a goose or duck. Sometimes they'd fight in the water and make a bunch of splashing sounds, so at first I ignored it. But as it persisted, I decided to lower the volume on the TV and listen. I put my ear up to the window even, and I heard consistent splashing sounds, way too heavy to be from a duck or goose. It sounded like they were splashes from a person. I opened the door in the sunroom and stepped outside to the deck. I looked out to the pitch darkness of the backyard. I now heard a man's humming along with the splashes. Someone was definitely swimming in the water. They were trespassing. Each house on the pond owned a specific chunk of the pond. I stepped inside for a second to flick on the lights to the backyard deck. As I did this, just a bit of the pond was exposed, and the splashes and humming stopped. Whoever it was clearly saw me. I wondered if it was one of the neighbors going for a swim or something, which also just seemed weird because no one really swam in the pond ever. But honestly, whether it was or wasn't a neighbor, I wasn't going to confront whoever it was. I stepped back inside and turned off the lights, of course locking the door as well. I texted my brother, who was away at college, about it. He didn't answer right away. I was trying not to creep myself out over it, but watching TV after this was kind of hard. I couldn't focus on the show. I looked out the window, but all I could see outside was darkness. I still had the TV on in the background, not realizing how revealing the light from the TV would be outside. And then, I thought I heard something on the deck. I hurried to find the remote and turn off the TV, and as the room went black and silent, it took me a few seconds to adjust, and realized that there was the sound of someone's heavy breathing right outside one of the many windows in the room. I instantly laid down flat on the couch to try and hide myself, and after a short moment of silence, a deep voice from outside the window said, "I see you." My heart dropped into my stomach. I couldn't decide in the moment whether to speak or keep hiding, so I just blurted out, "Paul, is that you?" Paul was the name of one of our neighbors. I said this, clinging on to the hope that maybe it was him, and he was just messing with me. But the man outside didn't respond to this. I just heard footsteps walking away. As the barefoot-sounding footsteps faded to silence, I still laid flat on the couch, too afraid to move. I laid for a few minutes, before the thought to go check that all the doors were locked came to mind. I exploded off the couch and ran straight for the front door. It was locked, as was the side entrance door. After a little while longer and texting my entire family about what was going on, my dad told me to turn the backyard lights on and check if anyone was still out there. He basically told me to be the man of the house and protect it. So I listened and checked the back deck through the window. It was clear. I brought a big knife outside with me onto the deck, and I looked down. There were wet footprints that had half dried by then, but I could tell that they were barefoot footprints. I followed the trail of footprints around to the side part of the deck, and what I saw was nightmare fuel. The top part of someone's head, namely their eyes and forehead, was peering just over the edge of the deck from the ground below, looking at me as if he heard me coming and was waiting. As we made eye contact, he turned away, and by now I was ready to call 911. I did so before even telling my parents. I locked myself inside, waiting for them, and when they came, I felt instantly better. They asked if our family had any enemies or people who don't like us, or if we have any problem neighbors. Questions like that. They did do a quick sweep of the property and then left. I decided to shut every window that night and run the air conditioning just for added safety. When I awoke the next morning, I was just delighted to see sunlight. I don't believe that man ever returned to our house, and we still don't know who it could have been. I have a dog who I take for a walk 3 times a day. First in the morning, then in the afternoon, and finally at night. I take him on the same route every time, which is through our driveway exit, which leads to a cul-de-sac parking lot for the condominium complex we live in. This will make sense soon as to why I'm telling you this. On the night walk, I always go somewhat late. I'm not sure why, but it's been a habit ever since I've had him, and it's never been a problem for us. Until one night, I begin our final walk of the day and go our usual route. I have a flashlight with me as there are no lights at the parking lot, and I'm listening to music with only one AirPod as I feel it would be for the best just in case I heard something unusual. And I did. As I'm approaching the parking lot, I was hearing something. A voice of some kind that was up ahead of me, but I was completely zoned out in my own world of music as it was happening. But then my mind finally caught up, and I stopped. I took the AirPod out and stood still to listen, just to see if I was only hearing things. And then it happened again, a voice that spoke ahead of me, but I couldn't see anyone. So I did the stupid thing and continued to carefully walk forward because I thought it was all in my head. But something didn't feel right about it. I stopped again after a few feet, right next to where all of the cars were parked, and I had my flashlight pointed everywhere in front of me. I stayed listening, and the creepiest thing that has ever happened to me yet was hearing a muffled voice of what sounded like a kid say the word help. My heart dropped so fast I couldn't move my legs. I frantically pointed my flashlight everywhere to see where it was coming from. I was sure it was coming from the cars, but I was completely thrown off by this. But there wasn't a kid in sight, or anyone nearby. It was just me and my dog, who didn't seem to notice anything as he was just sniffing some bushes nearby. And then I heard it again. The word help was spoken 3 more times, and it was coming from my left side where the cars were parked. It made me panic even more. I didn't know what to think of it, and I knew I wasn't imagining this when I saw my dog's ears perked up, and he was looking in the same direction I was facing after it happened. And that's when it hit me about how incredibly eerie all of this was. After hearing it multiple times, I realized the kid's voice didn't sound entirely like a kid. I don't know how to explain it, but it was like the mix of an adult and a child at the same time. And each time they called for help, not only was the voice always muffled, but it was spoken in a more generic statement as opposed to a cry for actual help every time. And I mean that literally. There was absolutely no change in the tone, inflection, sound, or anything of sorts. My dog and I ran straight home afterwards, and I tried to explain to my mom what happened. She was puzzled herself about what it could have been, and I suggested we call the cops on the off chance that there was actually someone in need of help, but she didn't think it was necessary. So many questions were conjuring up in my head. Why was the voice muffled? Was there someone in the car that I couldn't see? Or was it something darker waiting for me to move closer? I don't like to think too much about it, but whatever it was, it still makes me feel extremely disturbed to this day. This picture is where I had stopped and taken my AirPods out to listen, and I heard it up ahead on the left. This is where I had gotten closer and heard it on my left side. I'm aware that there's a condo complex on the right side, which some may think the noise was coming from, but it was in this direction facing the cars where my dog and I heard it, and you could see from this point of view that there's nothing to really indicate a noise coming from somewhere else. Also, at the time this happened, the cars that were parked were trucks and SUV types, so they were a lot larger and covering more space, thus making it harder to see from where I was standing. I never figured this out. What I'm about to tell
Whoa.
you is the reason why my parents moved out of a house that was in the family for 3 generations. I've struggled with depression most of my life. It's hard for me to shake the feeling of being useless. I'm doing much better now, but when I was a kid, it was horrible. Because of that, I spent a lot of time alone in my room. My house was nestled in a very woodsy area. There were trees on 3 sides of it and a forest separating it from any neighbors. My room was pretty big for a bedroom. It was in the back corner of the house, so the windows on 2 walls faced the woods. It was honestly pretty scary for a kid my age. It didn't help that I was also scared of the dark. Things started happening when I was around 10 or so. I was in the 5th grade, and I was at the age where it wasn't acceptable to sleep in my parents' bed after a nightmare, but I was still accused of having an active imagination. The first thing I noticed was my nightlight. It had different color settings, so if I wanted, I could change the LED around. I liked keeping it on red, which is what I fell asleep to most nights. One night, though, I woke up randomly in the middle of the night, which was unusual for me. I was really tired and fell back asleep in under a minute, but before I did, I noticed that my nightlight was a different color than the red I always left on. I didn't think much of it until about a week later. One morning, I woke up and realized my nightlight was once again not set to red like it always was. I asked my parents why they were messing with my nightlight, but they were confused and told me they didn't know what I was talking about. I explained what had happened to them, and they told me that the thing had always been glitchy. They knew best, so I accepted that answer for a while. At least until one morning after waking up to see my nightlight unplugged completely. It was just sitting there on the floor. Once again, my parents dismissed my concern and told me my brain should be focused on school. My dad said I was getting too old for a nightlight anyway. A few days later, my nightlight was missing completely. It had seemingly evaporated out of existence. Now I knew my parents were lying to me. They probably probably thought I should have outgrown the nightlight by then and took matters into their own hands. This incident caused a massive fight between them and I, since both of us accused the other of hiding it, and neither of us was budging. I couldn't believe my parents would blatantly lie to me about something like this, but there was nothing I could do. After that, things went back to normal for a week. That didn't last long, though. 3 nights in a row, I woke up randomly in the middle of the night. Each time, I had no idea what was waking me up. After it happened a 4th time in a row, I told my parents. They told me that I was going through puberty, and that changes to my body are natural. The next time it happened, I stayed awake instead of falling back asleep. A few minutes after I woke up, I heard faint rustling noises from my closet. My parents didn't believe me. My dad even checked my closet, and there was nothing in there besides old toys and posters. The next 4 days remained the most traumatizing nights I've ever experienced in my life. I'd been woken up only to hear rustling in my closet. It was torture. I couldn't take it anymore. I begged my parents to believe me, and my dad got angry. He dragged me to my closet to prove there was nothing in there. He started throwing toys around my room, clearing the closet bit by bit, yelling at me the whole time. That is, until he pulled one of the posters off the wall. My mother and father stared in horror at the massive hole in the wall the posters had concealed. My mom started screaming, and my dad pulled out a flashlight. The hole was way too deep to see where it led, so my dad ran outside and began inspecting the outside of the house. There was a tiny hole in the dirt at the base of the house, and a little digging revealed that it was more than a divot. There was literally a passageway from the woods to my room. My mom and I were out of the house that night to my aunt's house. We moved out shortly after this. I stayed at my aunt's house until we did. I don't like thinking about this experience, but I'm gonna have to face it eventually. My parents also refused to talk about this incident, and I think it's partly because they feel some blame for not taking me seriously. It's chilling to think that there was a stranger in my room every night for over a month. I have no idea what they wanted, and will probably never know. If your kids come to you with something that sounds abnormal, believe them.
Yeah, that shit's only $82. I thought it'd be more.
To be completely honest with you, I'm a little lost in life right now. I won't get into it too much, but all you need to know is that my family situation is horrible. And for the past 3 years, I've tried to stay as far away from home as possible. My close friends from high school have been changing in ways I don't like, and I feel like my hometown has nothing to offer me anymore. I'm about to be a senior in college, and to be completely honest, I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to do with my life after that. Enough with the sob story, though. I was in Berlin last year for whatever reason, probably searching for a sense of place or trying to find a direction in life. I remember the name of the bar I was in, Reduya. I was there alone, nothing I'm not used to. I was getting ready to leave when I felt around my pocket and realized my apartment keys were missing. Just my luck. I stumbled out of the bar and began walking toward my apartment anyway. The whole thing was locked up. There was no way I was getting in there, and it was way too late at night to get a replacement set. I'm not sure what most people would do in a situation like this, but my first thought was to start looking for a place to sleep. As if my luck wasn't bad enough, it started raining. Eventually, I decided to sleep under a nearby bridge. I didn't even know where I was, but I was out of the rain and safe, so I was happy. As I was drifting off, I began picking up on some faint voices coming from across the river. I sat back up and saw what looked like 5 men standing on the opposite side of the river, along with a little boat that was tied off. They didn't seem to notice me. It took me less than a minute to realize what I was watching. There was an honest-to-God drug dealer or something going down right in front of me. My German isn't great, so I wasn't really able to make out what they were saying, but several briefcases and duffel bags were exchanging hands, so I filled in the blanks myself. I thought about finding a new spot, but I didn't want to draw attention to myself by moving. I figured I'd just wait for this to be over, then leave. All of a sudden, one of the men yelled something aggressively in German and pointed a gun at one of the other men. There was a brief moment of silence before the other guy put his hands up and began talking really quickly. It looked like he was being set up. The other men stripped the man at gunpoint of his clothing and started confiscating his belongings. I didn't feel safe there anymore and got up slowly to move. As I did, I heard one of the men shout what roughly translates to, "There's someone there." I started running, not even turning to look at them. They shouted more things at me, but the only words I was able to understand were, "Don't shoot." I ran until I threw up and nearly passed out due to drunken exhaustion. There was no way they'd be able to catch me, but they could have easily killed me. Sometimes I still think about how I could have lost my life that night if those men had decided to fire at me. Sometimes I feel like I'm fated to run forever. It was a normal Friday afternoon at my high school. I was walking down a hallway with my friend Emma as she talked about God knows what. I was just trying to get through the day because I honestly had a lot to deal with at home as well as at school, being that my foster parents weren't the nicest people, to say the least. As we walked past the lunchroom, I suddenly had to use the bathroom. I asked Emma if she had to go. She said no and that she would wait outside for me. I went into the bathroom and immediately noticed no one else was in there. I thought to myself, that was weird, because out of the multiple bathrooms in the school, this one was always packed at any given time. I shrugged it off and went into a stall, and a few seconds after getting in the stall and sitting down, I heard the bathroom entrance door open and shut abruptly, and someone entering the bathroom, but I didn't hear them move after entering. I didn't think anything of this. It wasn't really anything out of the ordinary. Maybe it was someone hiding from an admin. I went about my business. I stood up to button my jeans and read the writing on the bathroom wall. It was a bunch of random quotes and rants about teachers. Then I heard the door open again, and I assumed whoever was in here had left. I came out of the stall, and as I left the bathroom, Emma was looking at me with a weird face, almost like a "what the hell did I just see" face. I asked her what was up, and she asked me, "Who was that standing right behind you in the bathroom stall?" I got chills. I told her no one was in the stall with me and to stop fucking with me. She promised me she wasn't. She told me she actually came in seconds before I came out because she realized she did need to go. But then she saw someone else in the stall, standing with their shoes touching the back of mine. That's how close they were behind me in the stall. And she said she left immediately, not wanting to witness whatever was going on. I reiterated
Why?
that I
Why
had
the
no
fuck would
idea.
you leave?
However, I had heard someone come in, but I never heard them use the bathroom, and I had assumed they were hiding from an admin. That's when she told me no one went near the door until she came in seconds before I came out. I didn't believe in the paranormal, but this made my stomach sink. I found an admin and told her about it, and she pretty much tried to assure me that it didn't happen, that Emma was probably just messing with me. But Emma was never one to take things seriously or be serious in general, so when she looked me in the eyes with a serious face and told me word for word what she saw, I felt like it actually happened, and something really was in there with me, along with the fact that I heard the bathroom door open and close twice. I'm 18 now, and I haven't forgotten it since. This happened long ago when I was renting a small house in the town that I got my first real big girl job at. It was a small one-floor house with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and just enough living space for myself and occasionally hosting some people. I had been living there for a few weeks already. All was fine. The landlord, who I'll just call Michelle, was really friendly and understanding. I think she rented to me because she didn't want a male renting out her house. I'll skip unnecessary details and get right to the point. Something very weird started happening a few
I
weeks
caught
later.
a frog.
I got a knock at the door. I went to the other side and said, "Who is it?" And no one responded. I didn't open it. No one should be knocking on my door late at night. It was early the next morning. I had finished getting ready for work and was about to leave. I opened my front door and saw a big post-it note taped to the storm door. It said, "Hello, beautiful." I right away remembered the knocks on the door from last night. It was no doubt the same person, but the big question was, who could it be? I crumpled it out of disgust and threw it in the trash, hoping and assuming it would be a one and done thing. It was that night that I got another knock at the door, this time a little earlier while I was cooking dinner. I went over to the door, this time not saying anything, just listening. There was no peephole or glass to look through to the other side. I had no way of seeing who was there without opening the door, and that wasn't going to happen. as the storm door didn't lock. But this was the second night in a row, and now I was realizing this was some kind of stalker situation. I called my mom and dad to ask for advice, and really, they didn't even know what to say. My dad, who was a retired police officer, said that if I called the cops, they wouldn't really be of any help unless they were catching the person in the act. My dad advised me to not go outside late at night for a while, don't answer the door, and if it persists, that he'd come to town and spend a few days with me. So that was the advice I followed. The next morning, the first thing I did was check the storm door for another note, and part of me died inside when I saw another note stuck to the glass. This one said, "I like to watch you." I took a picture of it with my phone and sent it to not only my family, but Michelle as well. I asked Michelle if she had any kinds of issues with certain men or any stalkers. She acted appalled and shocked when I sent her a picture of the note and told her about the knocks. She assured me that she didn't have any stalkers and that she was in a long-term relationship. Still, I wasn't entirely convinced. I left a note on the door after work that day, saying if you're looking for Michelle, she does not live here. She only rents this house out. If you continue to come here, I will be reporting this to the police. Doing this gave me a level of comfort, actually. I thought this would end things. That night, every waking minute was spent with anxiety, worrying about hearing knocks at the door again. To my relief, there were none tonight. I went to sleep in relative peace, thinking my note worked. The next morning, I opened the door and removed my note from the glass, but then realized it wasn't my note. It was a new note, and it said, "I'm not looking for Michelle. I'm looking for you." And then it said my name, followed
Blood clots.
like it said in the previous note. I sent it to my dad right away. I felt seriously ill. My dad packed a bag and drove up first thing. He was at my house by the time I got home from work. And work that day was rough because I couldn't think of anything except for this horrific situation. I even wondered if someone in my office could have been doing this, like this creepy guy Fernando. My dad and I waited to call the police together until later in the night when we figured whoever was doing this may be hiding out there already. We wanted them to see the police presence. We spoke with an officer outside. My dad said it must have been a busy night since they only sent one. My dad, being a retired police officer, obviously didn't hurt in this whole situation. After the officer left with his report, my dad stayed out on the front stoop for hours, even after I went to sleep. Obviously, the person didn't return that night, and I moved out once I was able to pack all my things. Michelle was completely understanding. Thankfully, whoever was stalking me at that house didn't follow me to my new place, likely eliminating the possibility that it was a coworker. So I will likely never know who it was.
Thank God.
I'll be honest with you, I've probably spent more time chasing women than I'd like to admit. I've had to tone it down a lot since college, partly because of what I'm about to tell you. I went to school in California, and while I haven't been back in a while, when I was there, the culture was very open. And when I say open, I mean sexual. This honestly could have been true for other colleges in other states at the time, but I really wouldn't know. It was my sophomore year, and I had just finished pledging the fraternity Pike. About halfway through the semester, though, I was getting sick of only talking to sorority girls that seemed to know half the guys in every frat. It was honestly a little gross, and I started developing a fear that every girl I was interested in had been with several people I personally knew. I tried my luck and created a Tinder profile. It wasn't long before I matched with someone whose interests seemed to match mine. We started talking, and things were going well. After a few days, we made plans to meet up at a local college bar called Tap House on a Saturday night. This was actually my favorite bar in the area because it had pool tables and I had been clearing racks since I was 10 years old. I remember getting there a little early so I could secure a table and warm my muscles up a bit. An hour passed though, and I came to terms with the fact that I had probably been stood up. I was trying to decide whether I should salvage the night or just go home and play online chess when I got a notification.
Nerd.
It was Yamel, the girl I was waiting on, telling me she had just arrived. I greeted her, and she apologized for being late. We got some drinks, played some pool, and got to know each other. She was Latina and a heavy drinker, so I got plastered just trying to keep up. At one point, she asked for my Instagram, which I gave to her. 10 seconds later, I found myself staring at a collection of explicit photos she had just sent me. I was confused, but in my drunken state, I wasn't going to complain. Before I could even respond, she told me, "Your turn," which I figured could only mean one thing. Honestly, if I hadn't been so drunk, I probably would have questioned why we were sending pictures to each other when we were literally 5 feet apart, but I didn't have the foresight. I complied with her request. We laughed about the whole thing, and that was that. A few hours later, things at the bar were starting to wind down. I was planning on inviting her to my place, but she beat me to it, asking if I could spend the night at hers. I agreed, and we left the bar. I couldn't even walk in a straight line. It was honestly embarrassing. We Ubered to her apartment, which was actually in Oakland, something I hadn't realized before. Honestly, red flags should have been going off in my brain the moment we
Yeah.
arrived in Oakland. She unlocked the door of her apartment and stepped aside so I could go first. I took a few steps inside and heard the door shut behind me. It was pitch black in there. As I was turning around to
Blood
turn the
clot.
lights on, the room lit up. To my horror, I wasn't facing a harmless 5'2" girl anymore. Instead, two massive bald dudes with tank tops were standing in front of the door with their hands clasped. I turned around, and there was another white bald dude in front of me. I wish I could tell you more about the room I was in, but it was honestly difficult for me to recall small details of that night. I couldn't fight or flee, so I just froze. The guy in front of me began telling me my own name, birthday, and age. He then went on to say that the girl I had just gone out with was 17, meaning I had received and sent explicit pictures to a minor. He then suggested that I do what I was told, which I did. The two guys behind me confiscated my phone, wallet, and keys, all of which I gave up without a fight. I asked the guy in front of me what he wanted, and he basically told me that he was a major distributor of illicit substances in Northern California. He told me that I'd be outed as a pedophile if I didn't distribute his product to my fraternity and university. I wish I could remember more specifics. The two men behind me then gave me a piece of paper and told me to write down my address, followed by a list of names and numbers for as many students as I knew. I told them that I'd need my phone to complete the list, so one of them held it firmly in front of me and let me scroll through. All three of them were hovering over me now, knowing I was basically checkmated. I don't know what compelled me to do it, but the literal second I saw a chance, I ran. I was too drunk to think about the consequences of those pictures on my phone. I narrowly escaped out the door I had entered from and ran as fast as I possibly could. It's not like I was safe, though. I was still smack dab in one of the most dangerous places in America. Eventually, I found a nice-looking house and begged them to open up. I pleaded with them to let me use their phone and call 911, and then I told the police everything. But of course, I didn't remember the address of that girl's apartment. An officer picked me up and took down a report before asking me if I would be okay leading them back to that apartment. I was actually able to retrace the way I had run, and I waited in one of the squad cars as the police barged in. After a few minutes, an officer told me that the place was completely deserted and there were not any signs that people had even been there. In the following weeks, the police actually took my report seriously and launched a full-scale investigation. They concluded that it was probably gang-related, but were never able to arrest anyone. That was years ago. I bet this incident has been swept under the rug of Oakland's rampant crime and drug-related activity. In all honesty, what happened to me all those years ago is probably nowhere near the top of the list when it comes to that godforsaken place. I haven't used a dating app since. I've been smoking cigarettes every day for years. Before you judge me, let me just say that I recently started seeing a therapist for my nicotine addiction. Unfortunately, it hasn't helped much. The only thing worse than my nicotine addiction is my sleep schedule. I don't know what it is. I find myself staying up hours past midnight and
What?
while I'm trying to fix these parts of my life, they're extremely relevant to what I'm about to tell you. It began a few months ago. I was standing on my balcony, like I do most nights, smoking a cigarette. I live in a really secluded neighborhood. It's not like the houses around here are right next to each other. Despite this, I have a neighbor whose fence I can see over if I'm standing on my balcony. I'm not nosy or anything, but this particular night, I was looking into his yard. I had never met the guy, but I assumed he lived alone since there was only ever a navy blue BMW parked in his driveway. But not this night, though. There was a black van I'd never seen before sitting in front of his house. I didn't make anything of it, just noting the coincidence to myself. The next night, though, I made it a point to pay attention to his yard, and the same black van was parked there again. I didn't assume something sinister was going on. I was more intrigued than anything. The following morning, I went up to my balcony and looked into his yard. The van was gone. For the remainder of the week, I made a game out of observing the van at night, theorizing its purpose. I said I wasn't nosy, but I sure am obsessive. It's actually the main reason most of my friends drifted out of my life. I wasn't going to do more than observe, though. It wasn't my business or place to poke around further. That is, until one night, when I saw something that completely changed my perspective of the situation. I was up later than usual. It was maybe 5 in the morning. The van was there, as it had been the past several nights. I was smoking my last cigarette when my neighbor actually walked outside, something I hadn't seen yet. I watched as he made his way to the van, carrying what appeared to be a long black bag. It almost looked like a set of golf clubs, only much heavier. After opening the van's sliding door, he delicately placed the bag inside. He promptly got in the driver's seat and sped off. I was dumbfounded. I had absolutely no idea what he could have been carrying. I was exhausted though, so I figured I'd think about it more the next morning. The next day, I decided that I'd go out on my balcony a little earlier and wait for the van to arrive at his house. I brought my laptop up there so I could get some work done and wait. It was around 10 p.m. and the van wasn't in the driveway, but around 1 a.m. the van pulled in. I quickly shut my laptop and watched. Nothing happened for a good several minutes, like the van just sat there, engine running and all. After about 5 minutes, the driver door opened and there he was. I watched as he went around to the side of the van, then slid the door open and pulled out the same bag that he had put in the night before. He seemed to be struggling this time around, visibly trying not to crack under the weight of whatever was in there. After waddling a few slow steps, both he and the bag disappeared into his house. I didn't know what to think. I thought he
Weed.
would be there until 5 a.m. again, but that would be far too taxing on my brain. Something was definitely wrong though, and I was determined to find out what. The next morning, I flipped a coin and ultimately decided to follow his van when he pulled out that night. After a pretty unproductive day, I went up to my balcony around 4 a.m. and waited, cigarette in hand. As soon as I saw movement in his driveway, I rushed downstairs, grabbed my keys, and got in my car. I turned my headlights off and waited for the van to turn onto the main road. Once it did, I began tailing it. After 20 minutes of driving, he pulled onto a dirt path that looked like it led into the woods. It did. I followed, and the woods actually started thinning up a bit. It seemed like this path had once been a main road or something. We drove for another few minutes before I realized what his destination was. There was a deserted gas station literally tucked away in some clearing in the woods, and right in front of it was the BMW I'd always seen parked in his driveway. I feared I was getting too close, so I turned my car around and parked across the street from the dirt road. I must have waited there an hour. His BMW finally pulled out of the clearing. Nervously, I started driving back up the path, not sure what I'd find. I pulled over on the side of the road and started walking towards the gas station. It was eerie. The front door was locked. I walked around to the side. That was locked as well. So was the back door. I needed to know what was inside. There was a row of windows that I tried to open, but none of them would budge. Against my better judgment, I picked up a rock and slammed it into one of the windows. The door opened
Wow.
pretty easily, but there must have been a security system in that place because alarm bells started blaring. I sprinted back to my car, the whole time wondering why an abandoned gas station would be rigged with an alarm system. As I sped out of there, I called 911 and gave them a vague description before hanging up. I got back to my house and ran inside, my heart still racing. The next morning, I woke up hoping the whole thing had blown over. Boy, was I wrong. I went up to my balcony to see like 8 police cars in my neighbor's driveway, lights flashing and everything. I watched as an officer escorted my neighbor out of his house in handcuffs. One by one, the police cars drove away and I was left to my imagination. I lit a cigarette and stood there, finally alone with my thoughts. I've asked the police for details on several occasions, but they would never answer my questions. I've even tried driving back up to that gas station, but the whole road had been blocked off. Maybe one day I'll work up the courage to walk through the woods and go looking for answers. I'm not somebody who grew up with any kind of sleep disorders, such as sleep paralysis or night terrors. I've always been a very heavy sleeper, so that's why when what I'm about to tell you started happening, it was a shock to me. We all have the occasional nightmare. I used to call nightmares a free, 3D immersive horror movie. To myself, it might probably sound freakish, but in a weird way, I sometimes like the thrill of waking up after a nightmare. I was living with my one roommate, Patricia. I just called her Trish. We had very different schedules with work, so we didn't see each other much besides on the weekends. This happened in July. I remember because it was so hot out that I had the window AC unit on full blast every night,
Ooh, I
thinking
like
it was
those
one of those
glasses.
controls that helped me sleep better. It was the first
Mm.
night that I had the nightmare. A few days after my ex and I had broken up, and life wasn't exactly the best. I had a dream that I vaguely remember for the most part, but the part that I vividly remember is being in a room full of my family members sitting quietly around a dinner
Mhm.
table. And standing across the table from me was what I could best describe to be a creature that looked like one of the aliens from the movie Signs, only with horns and claws. It looked like what you'd imagine a sleep paralysis demon to look like, only I was still fully asleep and dreaming. The next thing I knew, the thing was standing next to me, looking down at me. I started to run away in my dream until I was in my room, or I guess my brain's version of my room. That was the last of that dream I remember before waking up. My room was pitch black, and the AC fan was on full blast. My heart was racing a bit from the dream, and I sat there thinking, wow, that was a creepy dream. I looked around the room naturally before laying back down and going to sleep. The following night, I woke up in the middle of the night to my bedroom door open, which I usually 99% of the time would leave shut unless I was drinking. My immediate thought was that it was Trish checking if I was home. I went up to go shut it and went back to sleep fairly quickly. I asked Trish if she came in my room the next day via text, and she told me she did not. So it was always possible I just took a midnight trip to the bathroom or kitchen that I didn't remember. It was the following night that I had another nightmare. That same demon creature from my previous dream appeared again in this one. This one was a lot more disturbing. Instead of being with my family, I was in a dark, square, empty room with the thing, and it kept getting closer to me. Oddly, I don't remember the thing actually moving its limbs to walk. I just remember that it kept getting closer and closer until it was on top of me. And then, like I couldn't even move, the thing took a claw to my thigh and scratched me, and I actually think I felt the pain in my dream. Then, the next thing I remember is waking up. I don't mean I woke up right after that. I mean I don't remember what happened after that in the dream. But it was dark in the room once again, AC on full blast. I felt a slight stinging feeling on my upper thigh. I felt it with my hand, and I actually felt like I felt something on the skin. I rushed to the bathroom and looked in the mirror, and I screamed out loud when I saw a gash in my thigh. I went to Trisha's room and turned on the light, waking her up. She asked how the fuck I got that, and I screamed, I don't know. We went to my room together and flipped off all the sheets and covers off the bed, looking for any kinds of bugs or spiders or any sharp object I could have laid down on. Which, yes, I understand makes no sense, but what else were we to think? Trish then looked at me and said, wait, and put her finger to her lip. She turned off my AC unit, and for the first time in days, the room went quiet. It all became sickeningly clear in an instant, as we both heard a sound from under my bed. The kind of faint sound that you sense from another person just existing in the room. I'm impressed at both of our ability to not scream right on the spot as we both looked at the bed and then at each other, and then left the room and then the apartment. We knocked on the neighboring apartment door until he answered. We asked him for help, someone was in our apartment. He was an older guy, so I don't think we expected him to go fight some stranger in our apartment. He let us use his phone to call 911. At some point while waiting for the police, we heard a door outside slam shut. It sounded like our door. None of us could look out the window in
Why
time.
didn't you lock the
When the police got there, we confirmed the intruder was gone. We did leave all the lights on in the apartment when we ran away, though, and left in a rather sudden fashion, so the intruder definitely knew that we knew. And then came the reflection I had of my dreams and what they actually meant. That demon in my dreams was supposed to be him, even in the first dream. And with my door being open that night, that means he or she may have been roaming around our apartment at night, possibly eating our food. And to think this person actually scratched my thighs so hard it left a mark, it's actually really disturbing to think about. This forever changed my outlook on dreams and nightmares. This happened when I was a little kid living in our old house in Suffolk County, Long Island. I'm gonna say I was about 6 or 7 years old. My older brother and I shared a bedroom on the top floor that used to be a separate apartment that my dad rented out to an old lady. But she moved out, and so the upstairs was mainly for my older brother and I at that point. The layout was as follows. At the top of the stairs, on the left was our bedroom, which used to be the old woman's living room. Straight ahead was the bathroom, and to the right was an extra kitchen and a small bedroom. We had a million toys in our room, as the room itself was huge, and it also had two parallel crawl-in closets on opposite sides of the room where we stored a million other toys and board games and stuff like that. There was one toy though, a race car with a bunch of buttons on it. The buttons would make the car's lights turn on momentarily and play varying sound effects such as honking, revving, and driving sounds, and a little rock song. It was a toy we had for like ever, because it was originally a gift from my brother when he was a little younger. It was a random night. My brother and I were both in bed, not yet asleep, when suddenly, like a jump scare from a scary movie, the loud revving sound of that car toy suddenly activated, along with the lights of the car in the middle of the room. I looked at the car and instantly got scared and accused my brother Luke of doing that to scare me. He was laughing hysterically, saying he didn't do it. I was completely terrified. The toy then stopped making noises and went
Oh
quiet.
shit.
I was extremely unsettled, as any little kid would be, but nevertheless, time marched on and I fell asleep. It wasn't for a while until something else happened. One night, when Luke and I were both in bed again, we both heard a weird thud in the room. Luke insisted on trying to creep me out, saying there was a ghost in the room or something, and I kept yelling at him to shut up or I'd get Mom. He kept laughing until we both noticed a light in the corner of the room. It was the toy car again. I got out from the bed and ran straight down the stairs yelling for my mom. I got to my parents' room and yelled there's something in our room. I'm sure I gave a little 7-year-old spiel about how there's a ghost in the room, hearing a thud and the lights on the toy car turning on. Luke entered the room, and my mom defaulted to telling him to knock it off if he's trying to scare me. He said how could he turn the lights of the car on from his bed? I slept in my parents' room that night because I was too scared to sleep upstairs. It was a long while after that night and nothing happened. Not until one night. Luke was not in the room, I guess as he was having a sleepover with one of his many friends. I was sleeping in the room by myself that night. I had long since tucked that car away in the small bedroom across the hall because it freaked me out. After my mom kissed me goodnight, I asked her to keep the door open since I was always scared when I was alone in the room. I rolled on my side and tried to go to sleep. But being that I was scared of being alone, I had a hard time getting tired that night. I felt wide awake. Then, there was a sound I can't explain that came from down the hall. I flipped over to face the door, and the toy car rolled into the room with its lights on. I let out a scream straight from the bottom of
Blood
my
clots.
pressed my body up against the wall. Moments later, my parents both came up the stairs into the room, noticing the car on the floor. I screamed that someone pushed the car into the room. My dad went to go check the other rooms, but said there was no one there. There weren't any places to hide up there besides the closets and under the beds, and my dad checked all of them. I don't know what my parents thought in that moment. On one hand, they probably thought the toy was malfunctioning or it's just my imagination. But on the other hand, I think they were also slightly freaked out. That toy car didn't have a feature to move on its own. My dad smashed the toy and threw it in the neighbor's trash to make me feel better. I slept in their room for a while until my dad forced me back upstairs eventually. This story is the reason why I believe in the paranormal and something after death.
I parked and put my hazards on, then got out. I double-checked that the bag had everything as I walked up the driveway, but as I approached the porch, I saw that the front door was open. Not all the way, but enough to be strange considering it was snowing and cold. I figured it was so I could leave the bag inside the house rather than out in the snow. So when I got up to the door, I pushed it a little bit more open and slid the bag inside the house. But just as I pulled my phone out to take a picture for confirmation, I heard a woman's voice yell from across the house. She asked if I was the delivery person dropping off her order. It sounded like a young woman, maybe even early 20s. "Yeah, I put it right here in your doorway," I said, not expecting the conversation. The woman responded right away, saying I could push the door open and bring the bag to her. I knew it was strange to be asking me to go inside their house, but I pushed the door open just to see where they were. Past the entrance, there was a long hallway that led to what I think was the kitchen, and on the wall, I could see the clear shadow of the woman who was presumably standing right around the corner.
What the fuck? Oh.
There was a long moment before the woman responded. She leaned half of her body around the corner and showed herself at the end of the hallway, telling me to just bring it over to her and gesturing with her hands for me to come in. But as she went back around the corner and out of sight, I realized that the shadow outline on the wall hadn't moved with her. It was someone else's shadow, standing somewhere by her around the corner. I stood there for a second as I felt blood rush through my body. Then I quietly placed the bag down and took a few steps back before turning and rushing away from the house. I stumbled into my car and glanced back at the house as I pulled away. In the front window, the figure of a large man approached and watched as I left. I stopped at a nearby gas station to catch my breath and rethink everything that happened. It was pretty clear by how everything played out that this was some kind of setup, but I also knew the police would have nothing but my word to go off of. I did end up reporting it, but when they went to the house to ask the woman about what happened, she denied that anyone else was there and denied the officers access to search the home for anyone else. So, like I said, the police were unable to do anything at the time. What the woman and the man were trying to do by getting me inside their house is unknown, and I can only imagine that I wouldn't be here right now if I had gone inside without thinking twice. Last year, my roommate moved out of the house we had been renting together for the past 4 years.
Oh, I caught 100 fish.
Gotten better jobs and were getting paid more, and the house we had wasn't the best, so it was only a matter of time before one of us moved out to get their own place. After he moved though, I was able to use more of the space in the house and actually just decided to stay there for another year or two. This happened during this time in early December. Our area was going through a week of some pretty bad snowstorms, and the office I worked at allowed us to work from home for a few days if we wanted to. Obviously, I chose to take the offer. I used my old roommate's bedroom as an office and worked throughout the day, but at one point while I was working, there was a knock at the front door. I left the room and checked who it was. There was a man on the porch in a heavy winter jacket. He didn't seem to be a worker or delivery person of any kind, just some regular guy. I opened the door, getting hit by a rush of snow and wind. "How can I help you?" The man smiled and apologized for interrupting my day, then explained his situation. He said his car got stuck in the snow right on the side of the road next to my house, and he didn't have a phone on him, so he asked if he could borrow mine. Obviously skeptical, I told him to give me a minute. Then I closed the door and went to the other side of the house. I looked out the window at the road he was supposedly stuck on. There was a small SUV that looked like it had actually slid into the curb and gotten stuck in the snowbank. Now that I was pretty sure he wasn't lying, I grabbed a jacket and put on some shoes, then went back to the front door. I was still a bit skeptical, but I stood on the porch with him as he used my phone to call his brother, just so that if he did try to run with my phone or anything, I could chase after him or prevent him from leaving. After a quick call though, the man handed my phone back and thanked me, then walked away. I went inside and checked the window, seeing the man getting in his car. Thinking everything was settled now, I went back to the office and started working again. Around 7, I felt like I'd done enough for the day and took the rest of the night off. It was then that I remembered about the man and his car and went to check on it, but I was surprised to see that the car was still there, and I could see the man moving around inside. It had been almost 3 hours by then, which made me wonder
I'll be back.
Maybe he was waiting for his brother to get off of work and pick him up. I didn't know, but I went to the kitchen and made some dinner, then sat on the couch to watch TV. I stayed up until about 9:30, then went upstairs to shower and get ready for bed. I turned the water on and got in the shower, but a few minutes in, there was an abrupt and sudden banging on the front door. It was loud and harsh, completely jump-scaring me and putting me in a fear-induced frozen state for a moment. The banging was so loud, it was shaking the walls, and even across the entire house, I could hear that it was coming from the front door. They were hitting it non-stop, and I could even hear them aggressively shaking the door handle. It was such a sudden burst of chaos that it was hard for me to know what to do. I turned off the shower and quickly got dressed, but as I left my room and walked down the upstairs hallway, everything stopped. It was just silent, no more sounds at all. I stopped in place, hearing only the wind from outside and feeling the eeriness set in, before I slowly walked downstairs and up to the front door. Nobody was there anymore. I quickly ran to the window, seeing that the car was still there, but the man was not inside of it. Not knowing what to make of any of it, I called the police. When they came, they noticed multiple sets of shoe prints in the snow, but they were covered up by the storm soon after. They took the license plate of the car though, and found a picture of the owner, and from what I could tell, it was the same guy that I'd helped on my porch. In the following days, they waited for him to turn up, but as far as I know, he never did. It's really disturbing to think about what could have happened that night right outside my door. Was it that same man desperately trying to get in for some reason, or someone else with a more malicious intent? It seems most think that it was the man running from someone and trying to get help, but what happened afterwards is still up for debate. Nothing is really known about that night. Where the man is now and what he was running from are just a few questions on a long list that will probably never be answered. This happened in 2015. I had just moved to a small house far from my hometown the year before, so I was still getting used to the area and hadn't met many people yet. I worked from home as well, which made it even harder. Anyway, for Christmas, I had no plans at all. My family was too far, and I didn't have enough vacation time to go out and see them, so this was actually going to be my first Christmas alone. On Christmas Eve, I stayed up working, figuring I'd just get ahead on some things, so I didn't have to worry about doing anything on Christmas Day. I was working in the living room, listening to music as well, when through it, I heard something coming from outside. I pulled out one of the earbuds and listened, but didn't hear anything else, so I got up and looked around. With my earbuds in, it was hard to know what direction it came from, but I was pretty sure it was outside the house, not inside. I looked out the back window, not seeing anything, then
Whew.
to the front window and again saw nothing. But then I looked out the front door. On the porch were a set of shoe prints in the snow. They led right up to my doorstep and then back out to the driveway. There was no mail dropped off or anything at all on the porch, just the shoe prints. It was really strange and made me feel a little anxious, not knowing why anyone would be walking up to my doorstep at 11 p.m. on Christmas Eve. I made sure the door was locked and went back to work, then got in bed soon after. It was a bit strange waking up on Christmas morning, feeling like it was any other day. I brewed a cup of coffee and sat on my chair to watch TV. I think I spent the whole morning just sitting there and watching shows and movies. I gave my parents a call and talked to them for a bit, but that was really about all I did. I thought about going out, but it was really cold and the wind was really strong, so I just stayed in for the day. By 6 p.m., I had basically done nothing all day and made some dinner, planning on going to bed early, but then I heard something outside. It was the shuffling sound of footsteps in the snow coming toward the front door. I stayed quiet, knowing nobody should be here. After a few seconds, the footsteps sounded again, walking away from the house. I went up and checked, seeing almost an identical scene to what I saw the previous night. After that, I forced myself to stay up later. I kept my eyes open until probably around 10, before I guess I fell asleep on the couch. I remember getting really tired and trying to stay up, but I didn't plan on falling asleep out there. When I woke up, the TV was still on and flashing light throughout the dark room. I sat up and paused it, then got up to go to my bedroom. As I walked down the hallway, though, my eyes instantly locked on my bedroom door. It was open, but I knew I always kept it closed. I walked over and pushed it open wider, then flicked on the light. Wet shoe prints were scattered around the floor, going to and from the window. In a complete state of shock, I spun around and turned on the hallway light, now seeing more shoe prints going down toward the living room. I followed them, but they stopped right outside the
I
living
just
room.
showed you it's strong.
Right after seeing me on the couch. The shoe prints were nowhere else in the house. Police did what they could, but if I'm being honest, they weren't of much help. The current theory is that the man had come by the previous 2 nights to see if I was home. After not answering the door, though, he likely thought I was away for the holidays. I know it's likely that he only broke into my house to rob me, but still, it's extremely disturbing, especially since I was at home sleeping when it all happened. Whoever it was, though, they never came back. Last December, I traveled across the country to meet my parents and siblings for Christmas. My parents had a decent-sized house, so we would usually just all stay there and sleep on the couch or in the spare bedrooms. That being said, I didn't rent any hotels, even for the drive. It was 10 hours long, but I just didn't see a need in stopping halfway there and wasting a whole night. I left early on the 23rd, planning it out to get to the house around dinner time. As I started the drive, snow was lightly coming down. Nothing crazy, but enough to cause a bit of traffic. This went on for a few hours, until it suddenly started pouring down. It happened over just 30 minutes, going from a very light downfall to an extremely heavy storm. Along with the winds, it was nearly impossible to see anything in front of me. Most other cars started to pull off to the side of the road, but I really wanted to keep going. I drove in these horrible conditions for the better part of an hour, having a few close calls before deciding enough was enough. I pulled into a motel and sat in the parking lot, waiting for the snow to clear up. There were a lot of other cars in the parking lot, but I think most were probably trying to wait it out like I was. But as the sun started to set, there was no chance of that happening anytime soon. I reluctantly went in and got a room. I went to my room and lay down on the bed. It was around 8 o'clock at this point, and I'd figured I'd just sleep now and see if it was clear in a few hours. I set an alarm on my phone for 11, then passed out. But when I woke up, I immediately knew something was wrong. I turned and looked at my phone, seeing it was just before 2 a.m. My alarm didn't go off. I quickly got out of bed and ran up to the window. The parking lot was almost empty now, but it was still snowing pretty bad. I sat back on the bed, and after some thinking, I decided to take the loss and just spend the rest of the night there and hope for the best in the morning. I laid down, closing my eyes, but now that I was more calm, something caught my attention. A cold breeze blowing through the room, and the clear sound of wind. I sat up, seeing the window at the end of the bed was cracked open. I got up and shut it, but I was almost positive it was closed when I went to bed. It's something I definitely would have noticed, being that there was a whole storm outside. A rush of adrenaline went through me as I started to worry. I faced the rest of the room, now looking into the dark and standing still, listening for anything. Then I slowly walked around, checking for anything missing or any signs that someone had been inside. I didn't see or find anything until I went to check out the peephole. That's when I noticed that both locks on the door were now open. Someone had unlocked it from the inside. Blood rushed from my face as I locked the door and backed away, thinking through every possible horrifying scenario that I could be caught in right now. I started putting my things back into my bag and getting ready to leave, but then there was a sudden shake of the door handle. I stared at it with wide eyes, seeing the handle move back and forth like they were trying to force it open. Then it went silent.
Oh,
I waited for a long
oh, my God.
before I slowly
Oh,
and quietly
oh, my
crept
God.
toward the door to check if it was safe to make a run for my car. I looked out the peephole, seeing a man leaning against the door like he was listening. I was frozen, but he must have heard something, because only a few seconds later, he rushed away from the door. I spent no time waiting, leaving the room soon after and getting in my car, pulling out and leaving the motel. I got lucky, as nobody else was on the roads, and they seemed to have just been plowed. I drove through the storm until I got to my parents' house, taking much longer than it should have. What that man was trying to do, I can't even begin to think of. They had obviously been in the room while I was sleeping and unlocked the door, but what they wanted and why they had to come back to my room, I just don't know. But if I hadn't woken up when I did and stayed asleep for just a minute longer, I might have never made it to my parents' house. Two years ago, I spent Christmas with my roommate. We were both in college and were splitting rent on a small home in the suburbs outside of the campus. Neither of our families apparently were really big on Christmas, and we were also kind of broke, so we stayed home for winter break. We still did a bit of decorating, and I'd gotten each other some cheap little gifts, so we could have our own small Christmas. But other than that, we mostly planned on watching movies and maybe going to a party at night. On Christmas Day, we opened up our gifts and hung out, and around 5, my roommate wanted to go to a party by the campus. I'd planned on going too, but for some reason, I was just tired and not really in the mood to go out. I encouraged him to go if he wanted to, and he took up on the offer, heading out by 6. I sat back and ate some junk food, watching TV, and just relaxing, I guess. But then around 8, I just felt like getting up and doing something. With no places open, I grabbed my jacket and decided to go for a walk around to look at the houses with Christmas lights. It was cold out, but not insanely freezing. I walked around the neighborhood and through one of the nearby parks, but while I was walking through a portion of the path, I passed by a man sitting on a bench. Now, this part of the path was covered in trees and not by any houses, and the man was just sitting there alone. It was actually kind of sad, but when I passed by, he looked up at me and just gave me this really cold look. It was very strange and made me even more curious why he was out here. I walked quicker, reaching the end of the path and turning back to go home. The rest of the walk, all I was thinking about was the man and what he was up to. Something about his look just gave me a bad feeling. I got to the house and opened the front door, closing it behind me and taking my shoes off. But before I even started walking away, I heard a thump right outside the door. It startled me, having come so quickly after I'd gotten inside. I leaned over and looked through the peephole. It was the man from the path, standing
Excuse me.
staring at the door.
The fuck?
His face was completely blank, no smile or frown, just empty. I cracked open the door. "Are you okay?" The man looked at me with his emotionless eyes and didn't say a word. I asked again if he was okay or if he needed anything, but he didn't speak. Getting weirded out, I closed the door and went back to looking out the peephole. The man stayed there for at least a whole minute, then walked off to the side of the door until he was out of my view. I looked over, seeing the window curtains were open, giving the man a view into my house. For some reason, now I didn't want the man to see me, so I was afraid to go close the curtains. All he could probably view, though, was the Christmas tree and the couch, but it was still really unnerving knowing he was looking into my home. As I stood in place, trying to think of what to do next, a dull thud came from outside the window. I quickly stepped back and looked, seeing the man slam a large rock against the glass. His eyes were still glazed over with no emotion, making it look even more terrifying. I ran and locked myself in a room while I dialed 911, hearing the man continue to repeatedly hit the window. After a few hits, there was a pause. Then it began again, but it sounded like he may have moved to hitting the front door. This went on for what felt like several minutes, before finally it went quiet. When police pulled in, the man was nowhere around. Outside, though, there were multiple cracks in the window, and the door had entire chunks of wood smashed out and laying on the ground. The police seemed to think that it was just an intoxicated person based on the information I told them, and he likely had no real reason to target me specifically. Whatever the case, the way he was acting was just insane, and if he had gotten in, there's no saying what he would have done.
ocean.
Shit.
In the deepest ocean, the bottom of the sea. Your eyes, they turn me. Now why should I stay here? Why should I
Dang.
stay?
Dang.
I'd be crazy not to follow where you lead. Your eyes, they turn me. Turn me on a phantom. Swallow through the air of the earth. Fall off. Everybody leaves. If they get the chance, then there's my chance. I get eaten by the worms.
Weird fishes. Weird fishes.
Yep, already.
Just as you take my hand, just as you write my number down, just as the drinks arrive, just as they play your favorite song, as your body disappears. No one will wind up like a spring before you had too much. Come back and focus again. The walls have been in shape. They got a Cheshire cat grin, all blurring into one. This place is on a mission. Before the night out, before the animal noises closer get cameras, before you come at all. Before you run away from me, before you're lost between the notes, the beat goes round and round. The beat goes round and round, and really got down. I just pretended that I was a blown instrument. As I set up shotguns, come on and let it out. Come on and let it out. Come on.
Thank you for the follow. Yeah, sure, of course. I gotta see what lobby I'm in. Why is my character moving on song? Oh god, I'm stuck. Is it full? Excuse me. Sure, one moment, please. Yo. Hey, what's up? Oh, okay, I ain't got no bait. Yeah. I like your avatar. It's cute. Oh shit, this costs money? Yeah, that's the second time that's happened to me today. How do I do that? Oh. What? Interesting. Is this where all the aliens come to fish? Yeah. Cool. Thanks for the tears. Ooh. I can't even sit. Oh. Listen to this. My bad. Normally I just have lurkers, so I just get to listen to main music loud. Why does it feel like it's later than this? Oh wow. You got a lot of cool props in this game. Oof. Shit. Shit. Wow, you can have multiple props? That's cool. Good to know. Thank you. Let the whole world look at you. You can gift in this game too? I didn't even know that. New player financial aid. Thanks. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Thank you so much. I'll sell them in a second. How long have you been playing this? Thanks. Appreciate it. I hate when I tap out. 2 weeks? Damn, this game's been out this long? Yeah, I found out about this game. Yeah, I saw it on Twitter. I saw it on Twitter today, so yeah. Nice. Yeah, I just saw it as like a cute game. I was like, why not? $5. It's like It's like if you really like fishing at Crossing, you can just like fish. Hopefully they add more to it, but it's fun so far for what it is. Yeah. A lot of other words I saw. I was like, what? I remember getting this shirt. Oh, that's cool. I was wondering, like, is this like a place that I'll end up getting banned from, or? But that's cool. Mm, sure. Whoa. It's a cool ass fish. Wow. I'm not at that level yet. Yeah, I was listening to some, but I kind of want to listen to some music, actually. I just started listening to music and then you showed up. I was actually listening to like a lot. I have a whole hour going. I just want to listen to some music real quick. But I had that shit going on for like a whole hour.
For the past couple years, I've worked on Uber Eats during
Look at them.
college lets out for a whole month, and Uber Eats is the easiest work to do without having to go through job interviews and all that stuff. Besides, I didn't work during school, so this was something simple to pick up on the holidays. It was a few weeks out from Christmas when this happened. This night it was
Huh?
snowing pretty heavily, but I really couldn't
Is he
decide
dead?
with what days to work since I only had the set amount of time off to make enough money to last until the next break. I borrowed my dad's pickup truck and started driving. The snow must have kept a lot of other drivers home because I was getting orders all night. Big ones too, the kind that pay a lot. I did this for probably a good 3 hours, and then an order came in to pick up from a drive-through place.
I'm watching.
20 minutes from me, but the tip and everything was really good. There honestly wasn't anything unusual or
Musky.
about this order. It was just as any other was. I went on my way to the
Yeah,
house.
they got some funny titles. I ain't gonna front.
It looked
Kind
like
of funny.
a pretty nice neighborhood on the other side of the county. I'd been around there before.
They had a really long one. I saw a guy like with like some crazy one.
And a lot of snow had started to stack up on the roads. I was also getting tired, so I agreed with myself that this would be the last delivery, and then I'd go home and work again tomorrow.
Sure.
Once I got to the
You
house,
for it.
I drove through the streets and looked at the houses as I passed by. They were all huge and had a ton of land between each of them, but none of the houses seemed to be very new. They had that
Freaky.
typical old look, basically just being really large and nothing else. Anyway, it took a while to get to the address I was supposed to deliver to. The driveway was covered in at least a foot of snow, so I parked on the road.
Damn. That shit cost so much money?
I walked up to the house, getting snow all over my pants and shoes. I noticed no
I
lights were
think I
on.
should take that from you.
There was a piece of paper taped to the front door.
Title for only people who caught super duper rare golden bait. Oh yeah, that's the one I saw. I didn't really read it, but I was like, some crazy shit he's had.
By the county. But before I got too far in, I heard
Yeah, that was exactly the one I saw, but I didn't read it.
I turned around.
Thank you again for the
coming from around the
fish.
garage. He had a short buzz cut and was wearing a dirty jacket. Just dropping off your order, I said to break the silence. But the man continued walking up without saying anything. Once he was a few feet away, I could tell there was something off about him. I guess it was just a gut feeling. He looked at me with cold and tired
Where are you from?
then held his hand out for the bag. I reached over and gave it to him, but he didn't move. He was standing right on the path leading to the driveway.
Yeah, I figured you're from America, but I meant like where in America? Like East Coast, West Coast, Mid Coast.
Even more so that he wasn't heading inside now that he
Bump.
had the bag.
Ah, I see.
Have a good night, sir, I said, stepping to the side and starting to walk past him.
You're like on the total other side.
And in the corner of my eye, it looked like he swung his arm out as if trying to grab me. I stumbled back and faced him as he began stepping toward me, saying, "Come with me," while reaching his hand out.
Uh-huh.
I kept moving back as fast as I could in the thick snow, and the man continued to chase me, yelling at me to stop running. Once I got a good footing,
Wow.
and get in my car, backing out before he even had the chance to get to me. As I drove off, I looked in my mirror and saw the man standing in the driveway and just watching. I called the cops once I was out of the neighborhood, but the man was already gone. Later that night, though,
Damn, they don't have one for laughing my ass off?
hardly owned by anyone at the moment, which I assumed the note on the door had something to do with. What the man was trying to do is unknown, but that whole situation has put me
Yeah, one for...
with all their lights off, wondering if it might be
No.
the same man. I was visiting my family for the
God, I feel like such a fucking millennial using those fucking emotes.
and I usually try to tough it out in one long drive, but this year snow had come early and made driving a lot slower, so I was prepared to stop at a hotel somewhere along the way. I didn't book anything in advance, since I didn't know how far I'd get before wanting to stop. I was just going
Which is weird, because I mean, they have like a sticking out your tongue, like mouth, so.
barely snowing, but the further out I got, the more snow seemed to be coming down. Roads were still clear, but everyone was definitely driving more slow and carefully. Around 8 hours into the drive, I still hadn't made it halfway there. I was getting frustrated as it was already 9 p.m. and it was just taking so long. I should have been over halfway there at this point, but now I felt like I had to keep going so that my drive tomorrow wouldn't be even longer. The snow had let up a little bit, but it still had accumulated on the road because there were no plow trucks. I drove as long as I could, making it to 12 a.m. before deciding I'd had enough and needed some sleep.
Alright, I'm gonna get another beer. I'll be right back.
And into a small motel parking lot. It was a long one-story building with 10 or so rooms. As expected, it wasn't the nicest looking place. The outside looked really old, and even the lights on the sign were dim and half burnt out. I parked in a random place near the rooms and got out, walking up to the main entrance area. Inside, it was a very small room with a front desk, but there was a sign propped up on the counter. It said, "Be back in 15, with a little picture of a coffee cup on it. The chances of me arriving while the worker was taking their break just showed my lack of luck on this drive. I walked out and back to my car, but this time, when I looked around the parking lot, I noticed something that I hadn't before. It was completely empty. I stood there in the cold and looked for a minute and didn't see a single car. And from the looks of it, it didn't look like any cars had even been in the parking lot tonight. I got back in my car and turned on the heat to warm up while I waited. Seeing no cars and nobody at the desk had me second guessing whether the sign was actually for someone taking a break. There were no places within 15 minutes anyway, so I don't know where they could have driven off to if they were taking a break. I sat back and tried to think of what to do next, but my eyes and head were so tired and I ended up passing out in my seat. When I woke up, a few hours must have passed. The snow had started pouring down again, and the wind was making my car sway. I sat up and looked toward the front entrance of the motel, but immediately made eye contact with a man peering in through my window. I jolted back as he stepped away and yelled something toward the parking lot. I looked behind him, seeing a truck on the other side. Another man got out of the driver's side and started walking up. The one by me then walked around my car, trying all the door handles. I snapped out of it and put my car in reverse, trying to back out, before the wheels spun under me. Now the men were moving quicker, one yelling at the other to come over to his side and break the back window. I continued moving my car back and forth, trying to get through the thick patch of snow, but the sudden shattering of the back window only made it harder. I was trying everything now, as one of the men was reaching in for the door handle, and just when he put half of his body through the window and opened the door, I finally got traction and spun the car around. The man fell out, and the other tried to get in his truck to follow me as I turned the car and made my way out of the parking lot. Once I was back on the road, though, they stopped following me. Although I don't feel like it was entirely my fault, I definitely should have not let myself fall asleep in that parking lot, especially in the middle of nowhere like that. What those men had planned could have been anything. They were obviously prepared though, and it almost seemed like they knew that this motel parking lot was an easy place to target people.
Yeah.
I'll probably never know. It was early December. I was at home this night, spending my day off inside by the fireplace. It was way too cold and snowy out for my liking. I did a bunch of things around the house that needed to get done, but otherwise, it was a relaxing day. I had the news running in the background, listening to how high winds and possible blizzards were to be expected starting tonight. By 5, I was already starting to notice it getting worse outside. I sat on the couch and turned on a different channel. Around 7 though, I could hear wind slamming against the house, and it really did sound like there was a blizzard. I got up and went to the window facing the
I
backyard.
think after this story, I'll go back to
At first, all I saw
Nightmare though. 'Cause alright.
with
This guy's not bad, but I like Nightmare though better.
a figure walking through my backyard. My backyard was pretty big and didn't have a fence, so it wouldn't have been that unexpected if it weren't for the blizzard going on outside. Whoever was out there was just walking at a regular pace, going toward the end of my yard, before the snow and darkness took over any sight I had of them. I stayed by the window for a minute, trying to catch one more look and figure out what they were doing, but I didn't see anything. I was honestly scared for them, but also couldn't see why they'd be out there at all. The end of my yard that they were walking to led to a road, but it wouldn't get them anywhere for miles, which was not doable on foot. I went back to the TV, but I still couldn't help thinking about it.
Which lore are you
5
using?
minutes later, there was a knock at the door. I went over and cracked it open. It was a man in a heavy winter jacket. His nose was bright red, and his face was pale white.
I haven't unlocked that one yet.
For a while. I couldn't know if this was the same person I'd seen in my backyard, but my immediate guess was that it was. "How can I help you?" I asked.
Oh, that's not so bad.
Humble smile and spoke through shaking teeth that he was waiting for a ride to pick him up, and asked if he could stay in my house for a few minutes to shelter from the cold just until the ride got here. I took a moment to respond because I actually considered it, given the state of the weather. It's easy to say that under no circumstance would you let a random man inside your house, but when they're practically freezing to death on your doorstep and asking for your help, the answer on what to do isn't as black and white. I told him he could wait on my porch, which had an overhang that blocked the snow, and offered to give him an old jacket of mine if he needed it. The man didn't look too happy, but just nodded and went off to the side and sat on the chair I had out there. I closed and locked the door, then went upstairs to grab my old jacket. It was way too big for me and was in horrible condition, but obviously that shouldn't matter in this kind of scenario. I picked it up and walked downstairs, about to unlock the door,
Take your time.
but something stopped me just a moment before. I don't know what it was, but it made me hesitate. I leaned over and looked through the peephole. The man was now standing right up against the door with his hand on the handle, like he was preparing to push it open as soon as I unlocked it. I felt my heart rate increasing as I took a couple steps back and quietly pulled my phone out to dial 911. As I whispered into the phone, I just stared at the door with wide eyes, knowing what was waiting for me on the other side. Once the police said they were on their way, I slowly crept over and looked out again. The man wasn't there, not on my porch or anywhere in my front yard. He was just gone, like he knew that I had called the police. Nothing else was found that night, and no signs of him ever showed up again. What he would have done if I had opened the door, I can't be sure of, but hopefully he never comes back. I do deliveries for my local
Oh shit.
I've always enjoyed late night walks. There's something about the stillness that makes everything feel simpler. I'm a welder by trade, been doing it for over 40 years now. I live alone on a big farm, just me and my dog Bosley. The house is too large for one person, but I never had the heart to downsize after my wife Maria passed away. My kids passed
Aw.
years ago, and ever since cancer took her, it's just been me and Bosley. One night, after a long day in the shop, I decided to go for a walk. My property is pretty big, so just a single loop is usually enough to satisfy my craving. The air was cool, and Bosley trotted along beside me. Sometimes I think he likes me more than I like him. I've walked that loop hundreds of times, but as I was heading back toward the house, something caught my eye. I glanced up at the second-story window, the one that looks out from the bedroom Maria and I used to share. For a split second, I thought I saw something move. I stopped dead in my tracks, staring up at that window. There was no reason anyone should be in there. I hadn't been in that room in years, couldn't bring myself to. I felt my blood start to boil at the thought of some stranger breaking into my house. I wasn't gonna stand for that. I rushed inside, my heart racing, and ran upstairs. The room was empty, just like I'd left it. No sign of anything out of the
Ah, shit.
I looked everywhere imaginable, but found nothing. Yes, I was pretty freaked out, but I was more angry than anything. I didn't take this kind of thing lightly. I figured I had just seen something that wasn't there. I stood there for a while, feeling foolish, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been there. The next night, I woke up to Bosley growling. He's a good dog, never barks unless there's something to bark at. I sat up in my bed, listening. That's when I heard creaking coming from upstairs. It could have just been the sounds of my old house, but my mind went directly to footsteps, which were coming from right above me. I'm sure you could guess which room is directly above mine. I debated grabbing my hunting rifle from downstairs, but didn't want to go that far. If it came down to it, I was fully confident that I could take whatever was up there hand to hand. I grabbed my flashlight and went to check. Again, nothing. The room was exactly the same, untouched. My anger was definitely starting to turn into anxiety at this point. Something didn't feel right in the house. The following night, I came downstairs to find the kitchen lights on. I know I turned them off before bed. I don't leave lights on. There was no question
Oh, I
anymore.
got a shiny.
Something was in my house. I started to panic. I called the police and told them I thought
Excuse me.
around. They came out, searched the house from top to bottom, but found nothing. They were nice about it, told me to call again if I needed them, but I could tell they didn't believe me. The next night was the worst by far. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to go upstairs and check the bedroom again. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it would settle my mind. But when I opened the door, I froze. There were clothes scattered all over the floor. Maria's clothes. I had packed them away after she died. Now they were everywhere. Something like this doesn't just happen randomly. And then I saw her. There was a woman standing in the doorway, just staring at me.
Ah, kawaii.
She wasn't Maria. She was too short. I don't know who she was, but she didn't belong there. I had never been so afraid in my life. Without thinking, I ran at her. She turned and bolted down the stairs and out the front door. By the time I got outside, she was gone. I searched the property with Bosley, but there was no trace of her. I didn't sleep that night. For months after that, I couldn't sleep. I was
I fucking bet.
convinced I heard footsteps upstairs at night. Every little noise set me off. I slept with my rifle next to my bed, terrified that I'd have to use it one night. Every little noise set me off. I debated calling my brother to come stay with me, but I wasn't gonna do that. I was raised to always handle my own shit, so that's what I did. The nightmare didn't end though. One night, I was sitting in the living room when I noticed a figure standing in the yard, looking straight at me through the window. It was her again. My heart felt like it stopped. I grabbed my hunting rifle and ran outside, Bosley close behind. She was still there, just a silhouette in the moonlight, watching me. I fired a few warning shots into the air, hoping to scare her off. That was enough to get her to turn and run into the darkness, but it's not like that made me feel any better. I was literally being tormented by some random woman who was probably homeless. I couldn't even imagine why this was happening to me. I stood there for a long time, waiting to see if she'd come back. She never did. I I haven't seen her since, but I know it's only a matter of time. I'm fully prepared to defend myself, but I don't think living in perpetual anxiety like this is sustainable. Thank God for Bosley. I have no idea what I'd do without him. I'll send an update if anything happens. I work for a catering service, which means I'm on the road a lot, usually late at night. I spend most of my time lugging stuff from place to place in this massive truck the company makes me drive. It's not the worst job in the world, but the hours suck, and it's not at all what I thought I'd be doing with my life. By the time I get home, I'm either so wired from caffeine that I can't sleep, or I pass out the second I hit the bed and stay that way for 12 hours. I was driving back home one night at like 2 a.m. It was nice to be driving my own car again. As I was approaching my house, I realized I had probably had one too many Red Bulls and there was no way I'd be able to sleep. On top of that, I hadn't eaten in hours and I was starving. There's a McDonald's right off the highway about 10 minutes from my house. It's usually my first choice when it comes to late night snacks since it's just so convenient. I'm not even one to gorge myself on fast food. I just occasionally get this weird craving that only a handful of fries can satisfy. It's obviously 24/7, and I think
I know that feeling though.
I don't remember exactly what time it was, but it was definitely after 2 by the time I pulled into the drive-thru. There were a few cars ahead of me, which I was actually kind of surprised by. It's not like this McDonald's was a busy spot at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. As I was sitting there impatiently, I found myself staring off into space, wondering what was taking so long. That's when I noticed something strange. There was an old, beat-up Volkswagen with its windows tinted backed into a spot in the very corner of the lot. The McDonald's itself was only accepting drive-thru orders at this hour, so it didn't make sense why there'd be a car in the lot. There were reserved spots on the other side for employees, so it couldn't have been one of them. I figured it was maybe just someone eating in their car, which it probably was. I myself did that from time to time, so I guess I couldn't judge. It was just an odd sight, to be completely honest. I got my food and started driving away. I didn't want to go home just yet, but I also didn't want to just sit there idling my car. I began racking my brain, trying to think of a good place to scarf down the food. I live in a pretty lush area, so there's honestly a lot of options, but I didn't want to beat around the bush too much considering how late it was. There's a massive nature preserve literally down the street from my house. It's situated on a mountain and is essentially just an enormous forest. The kicker is that there's a scenic lookout point at the peak with a view of the city. There's a road that loops around the perimeter of the preserve and will take you right to the peak, which is nice during the day. After the preserve closes, though, the road is inaccessible to cars, but still a convenient path to get to the peak without having to walk through any woods. I used to go there with my friends from high school all the time. It was kind of a default spot when we wanted to be outside. We'd hang out, talk, smoke, or just appreciate the view. I actually hadn't been there in a while because I was just so busy working all the time, so I figured going there would deliver a much-needed nostalgia rush. When I got to the preserve parking area, it was completely empty. I say parking area because it wasn't a traditional parking lot with spaces for cars, but rather a big patch of gravel that veered off from one of the roads that ran past the preserve's border. Like I said, the actual preserve was closed, meaning I'd have to walk all the way up to the lookout spot from outside. Before I could even turn off the engine, I saw headlights pulling into the lot. That was unsettling enough on its own. Who else would be here at 2 a.m.? And then I realized what I was looking at. It was that same Volkswagen from the McDonald's parking lot. I was 100% certain of it. I parked a little ways away, and the engine cut off. I felt the unease start to pour in. What were the odds of that happening naturally? Had they followed me? My window was partially rolled down, and as far as I could tell, there was no music coming from that car, or at least none that I could hear. After nothing happened for a good minute or so, my fear started to fade. They were probably doing the same thing I was, out for some fresh air or a smoke. It's a pretty popular spot for that kind of thing, but I was just so weirded out considering how late it was. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, even though I concluded that it was just one of those unexplainable coincidences. I sat there for a minute, debating if I should just go home. I didn't want to leave, but I didn't want to be alone either. I picked up my phone and FaceTimed one of my close friends who lived a few minutes away. I told myself that if he didn't pick up, I'd just eat my food in the car and drive home. He was actually awake, though, which I was a little surprised by. He said he had been up writing a paper. I convinced him to swing by and hang out for a bit.
Oh
He
shit.
was down. He said he'd be there in 10. While I waited, I kept my eyes on the Volkswagen. It still hadn't moved. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. When Sebastian finally pulled into the lot, I felt a lot better. We both got out of our cars and began walking up the path. Before the parking lot fully receded from view, I shot a glance backwards. The Volkswagen was still there, but I saw all 4 doors open at once. 4 guys stepped out. They just stood there for a few seconds, looking at each other. They weren't even talking, just looking around at each other. It was freaky. I nudged Sebastian, who realized what I was looking at. Before they could see us, we continued walking up the path so that the lot was obstructed from view.
John, I was like paying attention.
Sebastian didn't seem that concerned. He told me they were probably just going out to smoke. We kept walking, and by the time we got to the top, the city view was enough to take my mind off things. We always sat on this little rock wall that was supposed to keep people from wandering off the edge of the mountain. We sat there, eating and talking like we used to. It was nice. Of course, that nice feeling didn't last very long. We heard the sound of talking and laughter quickly approaching.
Welcome back.
We turned around to see 3 guys walking towards us, sharing what looked like a blunt. They were acting friendly enough, which definitely calmed my nerves a little. Instead of finding their own spot, though, they walked right up to us like they wanted to start a conversation. The guy in the blunt was covered in tattoos and had a nose ring. He honestly looked pretty intimidating. He flashed half a smile before asking us if we wanted to smoke. We both said no, and one of the other guys laughed and called us pussies, to which Sebastian scoffed at. My curiosity got the better of me, and I blurted out a question about what they were doing at McDonald's. The guy holding the blunt dropped his smile instantly and narrowed his eyes, like he was caught off guard by my question. His 2 friends did the same, staring at us with cold expressions. They didn't say anything for an uncomfortably long time. That's when I remembered that there had been 4 guys in that car, not 3. One of them was missing. At that point, I was fully prepared to run. I knew Sebastian was thinking the same thing. Finally, the ringleader told us that he worked nights and that he had just gotten off. He pulled his hoodie up to reveal a McDonald's uniform, I think because he knew we wouldn't have believed him otherwise. He then went on to say he came to the spot every day after work to smoke with his friends. While that definitely calmed me down a bit, something about this situation was terribly off. I could tell Sebastian felt the same. We decided it was time to go. As we started walking down the path, Sebastian stopped and pointed into the trees. I followed his gaze and saw the 4th guy, half hidden in the darkness. He was holding something, but I couldn't make out what it was. I felt my heart start racing. The moment he saw us looking, he started moving. That's when we ran. We bolted down the path, glancing back to see him chasing us with the 3 other guys close behind. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I could hear their footsteps getting closer, but I didn't look back again. We finally made it to the parking lot, jumped into our cars, and floored it out of there. As I was speeding away, I could see those guys rushing to get in their car. I didn't feel comfortable driving home out of fear that I'd be leading them right to my house. I called Sebastian and told him we should meet back up on his street. We had a decent head start on them, and I don't think we were followed, but I wasn't taking any chances. When Sebastian and I met back up, we were still in shock about what the hell just happened.
Oh,
I don't know if they were
big
trying to
tuna.
hurt us or worse. I didn't know what to think. Sebastian showed me his phone and said he had snuck a picture of them while they weren't looking. He sent it to me, but I wasn't sure what to even do with it. I had off the next day, so I convinced Sebastian to come with me back to the McDonald's so we could at least report the employee. The next day, we approached a guy in the younger
All
side.
right, take your time.
We showed him the picture and told him what happened, and his eyes widened. He told us something literally out of a horror
Take
movie.
your time.
Apparently, that guy's girlfriend had also worked at that same McDonald's and had dumped him a few months ago. He didn't take it well and would harass her.
Oh shit.
Stalk her after her shifts. He obviously got fired, but that didn't help. The police were involved shortly after, and there was a restraining order put in place. Apparently, he had been violating that restraining order because he was camping out in the parking lot. Sebastian and I were horrified. I have no idea why he'd decide to follow me, but it was clear that he was unhinged. I'm praying that the police catch him camping out in the parking lot, because then he'll actually be screwed. I just hope he doesn't recognize my car anywhere. It's only been a week, but I haven't been back to that McDonald's or the preserves since. Hopefully the police are able to do something, but that's out of my control. Forgive me if I don't remember every detail of the story. It happened a while ago. I grew up in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. Not much goes on around here, so finding things to do can be a challenge. In high school, a few friends and I would sneak into and explore old, abandoned buildings. That's the sort of thing we did at that age. I didn't realize how popular that kind of stuff is until many years later. Apparently, lots of people like to explore abandoned buildings. Anyway, there was this abandoned church that we'd been to a couple of times before. It was in Narberth. I actually remember the exact address, 198 Elmwood Avenue. The place was creepy, but it was kind of our go-to spot for late-night thrills. One fall evening, a few of us decided to hit the church and drink a little inside. It was a chilly night, and the air had that crisp bite to it. There were 6 of us, me, Luna, Gina, Johnny, Max, and Allie. The church sat behind an 8-foot chain-link fence, which we had to climb to get in. The doors were all boarded up, so we always went through a window on the side. Once you were inside, the first thing you noticed was the floor.
Oh, nice.
The floor was just dirt. It looked like someone had ripped out the floorboards years ago, leaving only a hole in the center where a set of concrete stairs led down to the basement. That's where we always ended up, down in the basement. The basement had 3 rooms.
How are you playing that? With like a MIDI keyboard, or are you just like actually just putting in the notes? I haven't like actually looked too much into it.
Broken chairs, a busted couch. I remember having to shush Johnny like 12 times because he was a lightweight, and the tiny bit of alcohol he had was making him really loud and antsy. Being in such a big group was always a plus, though, and I felt much safer knowing we had. We messed around for a while, drinking and laughing like we usually did. We might have had a speaker playing music, but I don't fully remember. Out of nowhere, a door slammed.
Oh, okay.
That's how loud it was. We froze, staring at each other with
That's
considerable
pretty dope.
surprise. At first, I thought one of us had closed the door by accident, but no one was near it. Almost immediately, Luna, Gina, and Johnny made a break for it, sprinting up the stairs, leaving me, Max, and Allie behind. We were the
Huh.
fearless ones.
Thing is, I actually have
We
a
didn't believe just yet.
real guitar.
Pounding, I fully admit that, but I wasn't gonna let the wind freak me out. I could tell Max and Allie were thinking the same thing. I don't know if it was
Too
curiosity
bad I don't have mics in this game.
to investigate. After standing in silence for a few minutes, the 3 of us crept over to open the door that had slammed shut. Behind it was a small room, and the first thing I saw was a dresser. The mirror on top of it was cracked, and there were red stains smeared across the surface. At first, I thought it was old paint or something, but when I got closer, I realized something terrifying. It wasn't completely dry. The stains still had that sticky sheen to them.
Oh, bad apple? Not bad.
I felt the hairs on my neck stand up, and I was having second thoughts about not leaving sooner. Someone, or dare I say something,
Is there like a limit of how long you can play?
there was a
Seems like a minute of, or like seconds of how much you can actually play up to.
but there was something off about it. The whole thing gave me a bad feeling. I backed away, but just as I turned, we heard another noise. This time, it wasn't the door.
Oh.
It was coming from one of the other rooms. It was coming from the room we had just been in. That's when Max and Allie both decided they'd had enough. I wasn't gonna argue with them.
Oh.
And ran out of there as fast as we could. When we climbed back over the fence and hit the pavement, none
Fair
of us
enough.
heard. After jumping the fence, I turned around, and I could swear I saw the silhouette of a person standing in the open window. I still pray that by some minuscule chance my mind was just playing tricks on me, but I'll never know for sure. My friends and I never went back there together for as long as we remained friends. I've actually been back to that church myself, although it wasn't a church anymore. By the time I got around to checking it out again, it was completely demolished. I still have no idea what we saw that night. I'm just glad my friends were there to witness it with me. Had I been alone, I might doubt this whole thing even happened. If anyone wants to do
I
something,
forgot what song that is. Sounds like a Black Eyed Peas song. I forget what song that is.
I wouldn't be surprised if that church has a history I don't know about.
Oh, I caught it. Oh, nice. Nice catch, nice catch, nice catch. Oh, that's so cool. Thanks to you. Thank you. I would have never had known about this place. Oh. Is that American Idiot? Sounds like American Idiot. Oh. When September ends. There was a time where fucking Green Day had America in a fucking chokehold. Oh my god. Um,
Summer has come and passed. The innocent can never last.
wake me up when September ends. Ugh. Another song that was in our fucking chokehold. God damn, I couldn't fucking escape Delilah. Dun, 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 dun. I don't know why they kept making all those fucking oh, White Stripes. I think they broke up, right? I won't be surprised if we start playing fucking Marilyn Manson at this point. Or System of the Down. Or Hotel California. Not bad. Hey man, can you? I hate the fucking Eagles, man. Wait, hold on. What's it? Big Lebowski. Mhm. Dun, 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 in the matter tonight.
Jesus, man.
And can you change the channel?
I have a really rough.
About
Man, come on.
Sean, hate about that, and I hate the fucking Eagles, man. Here's Wonderwall. Oh wow, you know that. Can't play the fucking guitar without playing that song. What is Wonderwall's chords actually? Hello, belong back to you. Got to do. I don't know if Johnny feels the way I do. But I hate me. Sus 9 assist. Few days ago, okay, 2 days is gonna be the day we're gonna be back to you. By now, I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. Back to you. I'm sure you heard it before, but you never really had it down. I believe everybody feels the way I do about you now. Oh, wow. There are many things that I like to say to you, but I don't know how. Mm. Here it goes. Sure. Is it making a Zootopia 2? Why? God. Fuck, I forgot. Um. Oh, I wanna say, I'm a terror, but I've been struck by you. Well, oh, how nice of you. Okay, Shakira. Shakira, Shakira. Yeah, 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 yeah. Get down, you and I. Hey, got to rank 2. Nice. Yeah, you have like the most songs compared to everyone. Oh. This- Sweet dreams are made of you. I like the old Manson. I can't fuck with that new Manson shit, bro. Sweet dreams are made of wheels. Who am I to disagree? Travel the world and the seven seas. Everybody's looking for something. He's not even touching the strings. How's he doing that? Damn, Ethereum just reached Ethereum's at 33,000? Damn. I can feel it coming in the air at night. Oh Lord. Oh. Till winter came, I smoke with you, 'cause you taught me to pass the time. And oh shit. Oh wow. Oh fuck. Yeah, I'm about to head out too. Thank you for showing me this void area and for all the fish and everything. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Mm. Sorry for you. Oh. It's in the soul of the flow. In the circles when I take to the mall. Who I was before. Ocean and I can't explore. But I can hang on to the surface. The story oscillating time. My lungs are filling up with water. But I won't sleep to ball. I don't even know what the fuck he says there. Mm-hmm.
screens, I ain't that. Okay. I done seen a hater get whacked. Okay. Hit him 9 times, he a cat. Okay. I grew up on the east, no cap. Okay. Green card, green tips in the scrap. Okay. Keep talking about where I was born. Okay. Like a nigga won't still get clout. Okay. She sit on the wood, no splinter. Facts. New money like I got a printer. Facts. I ain't buying these bitches, I rent them. Facts. These porcelain teeth, they not dentures. Facts. Big VVS stones and they twinkle. 21. I'm at Waffle House rolling a sprinkle. 21. Let a S call a phone till he wrinkle. 21. I pop at his ass, he a pimple. That ain't something I would do. Hell nah, let you slide like it's cool. Nigga, hell nah, fake the truth. Play by rules, play with you. That ain't something I would do.
I would never lie, ad-lib. I would never try, ad-lib. I would never holler at you, I would never cry. I would never start no petty beef that do not fly, ad-lib. I would never put myself beneath one of my idols. I wouldn't submit, I make you submissive. I can't fuck nobody, man, but oh girl needed assistance. I don't be lying to no D, like I don't be like none of these bitches. If I feel like having free time, hit the seaside with them fishes. Yeah, yeah.
That ain't something I would do. Hell nah, let you slide like it's cool. Nigga, hell nah, fake the truth. Play by rules, play with you. That ain't something I would do. I buy a new car for the bitch, for real. I tear down the mall with the bitch, for real. You can't even talk to the bitch, nah. She fucking with bosses and shit, oh god. I pull up in Rarers and shit, swear. With choppers and Harleys and shit, for real. I be Gucci down, Gucci. You wearing Lacoste and shit, bitch, yeah. Montclair, yeah. Fur came off a belt, yeah. Yeah. Triple homicide, put me in a chair, yeah. In jail. Triple across the plug, we do not play fair, yeah. Oh god. Got them tennis chains on, and they real blingy, bling. Draco make you do the chicken head like chingy, ching. Walking Neiman Marcus, and I spend a life 50-50. Please proceed with caution, shooters, they be right with me. 21. Bad bitch, cute face, and some nice titties. 7,500 on a Saint Laurent jacket, yeah. Bitch, be careful when you dumping your action, bitch. I ain't no sucker, I ain't cuffing no action. Nah. The streets raised me, I'm a whole bastard. I bought a Rari just so I can go faster. Niggas tryna copy me, they playin' catch up. 21. I might pull up in a ghost, no Casper. 21. I been smoking gas and I got no ass. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 M's in my bank account, yeah. 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 In my bank account. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shooters ready to gun you down, yeah. 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 Ready to gun you down, God. Yeah, dawg, yeah. Not for real, dawg. 21. Straight up out the 6, now I got a house in the hill, dawg. 21. Wanna see about it, nigga, get you killed, dawg. Whack. Wanna tweet about me, nigga, get you killed, dawg. Kill, dawg. I'm a real dawg. You a lil dawg. Bill, dawg. Wanna build, dawg. Chasing meals, dawg. Don't write in your bitch like O'Neal, dawg. Shots I shoot like Reggie Mills, dawg. Chopper sting you like a eel, dawg. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 M's in my bank account, yeah. 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 In my bank account. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shooters ready to gun you down, yeah. 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 Ready to gun you down, God. Ruler clips. Send a ruler hit, pull up on your bitch. She say that I got a ruler little dick, spray your block down. We not really with that Rura shit. Glock caught now. I don't really give no fuck about who I hit. Yeah, yo, bitch, she get jiggy with me. Keep that ciggy with me. Bitch, I'm Mad Max. You know I got Ziggy with me. Keep a Mad Max. Case a nigga wanna get busy with me. Rari matte black. And I got a Bentley with me. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 M's in my bank account. Yeah. 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 In my bank account. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shooters ready to gun you down. Yeah. Ready to gun you down. Yeah. Ready to gun you down. Yeah. Ready to gun you down. Yeah.
Oh, fuck. Please. Let's go to Magic Mountain. 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 Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain. The Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain. The Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain. The Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain, 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 Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain, the Magic Mountain, Magic Mountain, Magic Mountain, Magic Mountain, Magic Mountain.
out of reach. You was at the farmer's market with your perfect peach. Now I'm in the basement, planning on my patient. Now you laying face down, got me singing over a beat. I'm so mature, I'm so mature, I'm so mature. I got me a therapist to tell me there's other men I do more than I just want you. If I can't have you, no one will. I might kill my ex, not the best idea. His new girlfriend's next, how'd I get here? I might kill my ex, I still love him though. Rather be in jail than alone. I did it all for love, I did it all on no drugs. I did all of this sober, I did it all for us. I did it all for love, I did all of this on no drugs. I did all of this sober, don't you know I did it all for us. I just killed my ex, not the best idea. Killed his girlfriend next, how'd I get here? I just killed my ex, I still love him though. Rather be in hell than alone.
You can have anyone you want. Why would you wanna be with me? I'm nothing special. You can have anyone you want. Why would you wanna be with me? You know I'm nothing special. Be with whoever you want. I don't care, I don't care. I don't wanna know. Don't tell me about your problems. You're not trying to solve them. Don't ask me for my help. Fix it yourself. She tried to call me yesterday, but I didn't pick up. Cause I don't got time. I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. Do whatever you want. I don't care, I don't care. Don't even tell me. I don't really.
Can't anybody see? We've got a war to fight. We never felt that way. Regardless of what they say, I can feel this. From this moment, how can
えてよ全てを知ってしまう不安なのになぜ知りたくなる揺らぐ思いよ春夏秋冬奏でて明日を行くたび積み重ねて気づけばあなたと夢の果てまで連れてってあなたの場所へ風になって息を潜めて連れてってあなたはどこへ時を超え心ほどいて耳を澄ませて黄昏るまで隠れたままで迎え待って気まぐれな風きっかけめくれて思い出あの頃何気なく聞こえていた言葉いつからか心の中大きく占める春夏秋冬奏でて明日を行くたび積み重ねて気づけばあなたと夢の果てまで連れてってあなたの場所へ風になって息を潜めて連れてってあなたはどこへ時を超え心ほどいて
Blinded by the light, wrapped up like a douche, another runner in the night. Blinded by the light, wrapped up like a douche, another runner in the night. Blinded by the light, wrapped up like a douche. Madman drums, bombers, Indians in the summer with the teenage diplomat. In the dumps with the mud. the stuff. Told me I got what it takes. She said I'll turn you on, son, into something strong. Play the song with the funky break. And go-kart Mozart was checking out the weather chart to see if it was safe outside. And little early birdie came by in his curly whirly and asked me if I needed a ride. Asked me if I needed a ride. Well, she was blinded by the lights.
Wrapped up like a deuce, another runner in the night.
She got down, but she never got tight. She's gonna make it to the night. She's gonna make it through the night. Mama always told me not to look into the eyes of
Got to the sun, but mama, that's where the fun is.
some brimstone baritone, Andy Sackman, Rolling Stone, preacher from the east. Says teeth from the dictaphone, hit it in its funny bone. That's what they expect at least. And some newborn chaperone was standing in the corner, watching the young girls dance. And some fresh soul moonstone was messing with his frozen zone, reminding him of romance. Wrapped up like a deuce, another runner in the night, blinded by the light. Wrapped up like a deuce, another runner in the night, blinded by the light. Wrapped up
PJ Diplomat. God, please, say to the reasons of the cross and pass to the crown. Turn the spot, the sand. Feel like old sister with the manager, mister.
single touch is gonna
I'll
make
make
it through the night.
Ugh. Alright. I'm gonna end it here. Thank you for watching me streams. Good night. I hope you have a good day or night. Thank you for